Chapter 1812. It was a light flick, but it felt heavier than a planet. After flicking his finger, the immortal emperor stared at Jiang Tian with eyes as cold as the coldest glaciers in hell without any emotion. In the eyes of the people on earth, the immortal emperor seemed to be above the 9 heavens, stepping on the sun and the moon like an invincible deity emperor. Jiang Tian, on the other hand, was like Seymour, who had overestimated himself and repeatedly lifted the boulders that the gods had thrown down. He looked heroic, but there was also a trace of helplessness in his actions. It was a tragic scene of life and death. The purple deity Qi of the deity world surged and instantly shattered Jiang Tian's chaotic shield. "Break!" Jiang Tian roared. He formed a hand seal and gathered all the divine laws in his body between his fingers. It was as if the chaos had been split apart and yin and yang had been split apart. A chaotic saber light slashed heavily on the finger like a saber cutting through water. Bang! Jiang Tian spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body flew out heavily. Crack, crack. The crisp sound of bones breaking was heard. Jiang Tian's body was shattered and even his spirit embryo was broken. The 9 orifices of his divine infant spurted out blood. The attack didn't slow down and penetrated the Taichu Heavenly Pavilion. The Aramba Heavenly Pavilion was torn to pieces. Many cultivators and mortals either transformed into ferocious tigers, flood dragons, and flying cranes, or used heaven-defying movement techniques to leap up and down like grasshoppers. They stepped on the wreckage and debris as they fled in all directions. "Husband!" Zhao Xueqing cried with tears in her eyes. She stepped into the air and rushed towards Jiang Tian. "My child, he's fine. He's your husband and he's extremely talented. How can I kill him?" With a seemingly benevolent smile, the immortal emperor waved his purple hand and caught Zhao Xueqing at an incredible speed like a bolt of purple lightning from the immortal realm. "Then," he said with a smile, "I've restrained the purple aura from the immortal realm. Otherwise, if even a wisp of it leaked out, how could the people in this iron lump survive?" Zhao Xueqing's clone couldn't break free. She ignored him and only looked at Jiang Tian with tears in her eyes. "I'm a divine-grade nascent soul cultivator, like the child of a true god. I won't let you take her away, old man." Jiang Tian's eyes were cold. He stepped into the air and flew hundreds of miles away. Suddenly, he took out the absolute heaven sword and slashed at the immortal emperor. The sword light that was like a torrent was completely condensed from the chaotic divine laws. It was dazzling like a ray of light, and it obliterated the laws and shattered the Grand Tao. This is the Taichu's most powerful Dharma treasure, the heaven-severing sword. This may be the last hope for Fairy Xueqing. At this moment, ancestral patriarch Shisha, Saint Anpo and the other cultivators from other planets were shocked and frightened. That sword was too powerful. It seemed to have the power to cut the galaxy and wipe out the universe. They knew that if they faced it, they would have no chance of escaping. The immortal emperor didn't move. But when the sword aura was 100 feet away from him, it suddenly shattered like a piece of glass hitting steel. It was like a cup falling to the ground and exploding. Whoosh! In that instant, countless streaks of sword light shot out in all directions, piercing through layer after layer of space and turning the area within a radius of several thousand kilometers into a storm of swords. Some cultivators even stood a few thousand miles away, thinking that they were far away from the battlefield and wouldn't be involved. But then, a sword aura flew over and cut his body and golden core into pieces. He was a peak-stage golden core cultivator, but he couldn't even block a broken sword aura. There were more than 10 million of such sword auras. In an instant, dozens of cultivators couldn't dodge in time and died. Seeing this, Zhao Xueqing's face changed. At that moment, the smiles of all the cultivators who saw this froze on their faces. Even ancestral patriarch Shisha was frightened and looked desperate. Saint Anpo smiled wryly and shook his head. "No, the gap is too big. He's still a powerhouse of the deity realm. You want to use us as pawns? Even if you don't mean any harm, I, Kong Taichu, won't allow it. My fate will never be manipulated by others." Jiang Tian roared and slashed out with his sword again. The immortal emperor's eyes remained calm, as if he was looking at a lowly ant baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Kong Taechu, do you know that I gave them the heaven-severing sword? Otherwise, how could those people from Zhongli have the ability to use the heavenly art? Suddenly, the undying emperor snorted coldly and moved again. He turned his palm into a fist and raised it up high. Purple energy gushed out and 9 heavenly lightnings surrounded it as he smashed down heavily towards Jiang Tian. The heaven-severing sword shattered into countless pieces and the purple thunderbolts kept running around it. Jiang Tian spat out a mouthful of blood as he was knocked flying. However, he burst out laughing. His body continued to break into pieces. He said in a frenzied and unyielding tone, "Old fart, if you dare to take her away, I'm going to destroy your sect, the Hengyu immortal sect, the 9 heavens, and behead you." Kong Taechu, stop it. It's not that I can't kill you, but I've shown mercy several times. I didn't kill you because Zhao Xueqing's heart of cultivation is flawless. Secondly, I saw that you have a good foundation and it's not easy to cultivate. You're still useful. The immortal emperor's eyes were cold and indifferent. I can spare your life, but destroying the worlds of the solar system and the South Gate planet region is just a matter of command. Do you really want to try? The next moment, the great path of the deity realm was strangled. Suddenly, a terrifying sound that shook the entire sky was heard. That was the last sound of a planet and a world. Everyone saw that there was suddenly a sun in the sky. Its light was blazing and the light of destruction was extremely dazzling. The temperature on the side of the earth that was facing the fire suddenly rose and the trees were scorched and even caught fire. The heavenly world is destroyed. Countless people exclaimed. Such ruthlessness and venom. He destroyed a planet and killed billions of people with a word. How can he be a giant in the deity realm? Especially Lucifer, Yi Xiaoman and the others who came to watch the ceremony. They were stunned and tears of blood rolled down their cheeks. Many people pounded the ground and cried. The size of the heavenly world was equivalent to Earth before the Spirit Qi revival. After several years of development, it was now very prosperous with a population of 1 billion. But now, all of them had been destroyed and turned into fireballs. But the next moment, everyone was enveloped by a deep sense of fear and felt cold from head to toe. The immortal emperor was able to destroy the Big Dipper planet region in 7 moves with 9 steps. If he wanted to destroy the solar system, he would only need 1 move. The destruction of the heavenly world was just the beginning. Kong Taechu, you are useful, so I won't kill you. But if you dare to continue to pester me, Earth will be next. Its historical mission has been completed. It doesn't matter whether it stays or not. The immortal emperor said coldly. His tone was very calm, as if he was talking about something normal. Are you really going to ignore the heavenly world for your own personal feelings? At this moment, all of the people on Earth and the extraterrestrial cultivators looked at Jiang Tian nervously. Some people were even filled with hatred and shouted crazily, "Is Kong Taechu going to ignore our lives and destroy the solar system to fight the immortal emperor to the death? How selfish! Kong Taechu, why are you so stubborn? Could it be that your so-called freedom and freedom are so important? He took your lover away, not you. Is that so? If you dare to kill him, I'll let the Hengyu celestial sect and all the planets under its jurisdiction, and even your followers in the deity realm of the 9 heavens, and even the deities and Buddhas, die with the people on Earth." There was no joy or sorrow in Jiang Tian's eyes, as if he was hanging high up in the sky. The immortal emperor thought that he could threaten him, but he didn't know that he was the Taichu celestial lord, the god of Hongmeng. How could he be threatened? Even if the sun was destroyed, the earth would be destroyed, and billions of people would be turned into dust. Jiang Tian would not take a step back. Chapter 1813. Before this, I always felt that your temperament was not compatible with your skills. You are like an adult mortal, but you have the innocence of a child. But at this moment, you have some of the demeanor of a reincarnation of a mighty figure. The common people are just ants. Why should you care about their lives? The immortal monarch praised slightly, but he was too lazy to say anything more. He seemed to be waiting for Jiang Tian to come again, and then he would raise his hand to destroy the sun and the earth. Just when the entire earth and even all the worlds in the solar system were in despair. Suddenly, Zhao Xueqing's doppelganger knelt down in front of Jiang Tian and said tearfully, "Jiang Tian, stop. I know you are not weaker than anyone in your life, but stop. Stop." Jiang Tian stood in the void and said in a daze, "You want me to stop?" "Yes, stop." Zhao Xueqing was full of heartache, longing, and struggle, but she still said, "You said that the strong fight for the weak. This is our home, the place that we have always protected. Once, we were willing to die for this home. How can you and I abandon them? I've let you down. I've given in." Originally, the god's self-destruction was her last threat, but she found that under the immortal monarch's vast and surging power of the immortal world, even the smallest factor in her body was controlled, and she could not self-destruct at all. In other words, her last trump card could not be revealed at all. Moreover, Zhao Xueqing's doppelganger thought and consciousness were the same as the original. Although as tough as a rock and not inferior to men, she had the heart of a strong person and dared to draw her sword even in the face of the Big Dipper extraterrestrial enemy. But after all, she was kind and compassionate. She did not want to sit by and watch the immortal monarch destroy the entire homeland and plunge the people into misery and suffering. But, Qinya, once you are taken away by him, you will fall into his trap and will never be able to rise again. You can't escape from the mercy of fate. Jiang Tian's 7 orifices were bleeding, and tears of blood were rolling down his face. However, he was laughing, and his laughter was getting louder and louder. He was on the verge of collapse, on the verge of insanity. He was grieving for the heavens and the earth, and his fury and hatred were overflowing. We still have time. We can still fight. We can still defy the heavens and change our fate. We can exchange time for space. We can still break free from this eternal chess game and turn from chess pieces into chess players. Zhao Xueqing revealed a sad smile. She seemed to be comforting and encouraging him. She said softly, "But once Earth is destroyed, even if you are the god of Hongmeng and the Daluo Tao ancestor, you will not be able to reverse time and space. We will regret it for the rest of our lives. Look back, look at your daughter, look at your family." Jiang Tian turned around and saw his daughter, Jiang Beibei, in the depths of Tianqing School. She looked like a porcelain doll carved from jade. She was looking at the sky with tears in her eyes. "Grandma, is Mom going to be taken away? I don't want Mommy to leave. I want to be hugged and kissed by her. Mom is just traveling with this old man. Just like when I went to the ruins of immortality, I will return." Zhang Wanqing comforted her with a teary smile. At that moment, Jiang Tian's will to fight slowly disappeared. He lowered his head and remained silent for a long time. His black hair fell like a waterfall and covered his face, making it impossible to see his expression. However, everyone saw drops of tears that contained God's blood dripping down from his long hair like dazzling gems, drifting in the air. He was crying. At that moment, the divine infant was crying blood, and the connection between heaven and earth was affecting the laws of the world. The people were crying and the earth was mourning. The wind was blowing, the clouds were surging, thunder was exploding, and rain was pouring. Countless humans felt heavy and depressed. They didn't know why they were in pain. They beat their chests and sang loudly. Countless monsters roared at the sky, as if they were going to break the earth and tear the sky apart, surpassing the world and ascending to the heavens. Nascent soul cultivators were formed by the laws of the world. Every nascent soul cultivator had imprinted their own laws in the world of stars. When they died, the world would also feel it. It was like the death of the heaven's sun. But many nascent soul cultivators didn't receive such treatment when they died because their cultivation arts were incomplete. But Jiang Tian was a divine-grade nascent soul cultivator. He was like the descendant of a true god. No matter where he went, he would be recognized by heaven and earth. At that moment, there was great sadness and anger in his heart. Zhao Xueqing turned around and knelt on the ground. She said, "Senior, I'm willing to be your disciple and comprehend the laws of the world, but there are a few conditions. Please allow me, Master." "Ah, little girl, you're not stupid. You finally understand. The immortal monarch stood with his hands behind his back. He was overjoyed and laughed. First, I will only love Kong Taechu in my life. No matter how many talents there are in the Central Galaxy and the Hengyu Celestial Sect, I will never change my mind and will never choose another cultivation partner. I hope Master can grant my wish. Zhao Xueqing said firmly. I promise you. With my protection, no one in the deity realm would dare to bully you, let alone the Central Galaxy. The immortal monarch said without hesitation. His words were full of arrogance and dominance. A day together as husband and wife means endless devotion for the rest of your life. Although I can focus on the path of cultivation and cut off the sorrows with my sword, I still hope that you can give my husband a spaceship of the highest level without any worries so that he will have a chance to cross the sea of stars and travel in the universe to pursue his own path. Zhao Xueqing said again. The immortal monarch's eyes flashed as if he were calculating. He hesitated and said, as long as you're willing to focus on cultivation and live up to my expectations, I will lend her a helping hand. Finally, Senior, you have to ensure the safety of the Jiang family and our homeland in the Milky Way. The graveyards of the deities and demons are already unstable. You have to ensure the stability of these stars, Zhao Xueqing said. But that's easy. I can resolve everything with a few pointers. I'll say that the Tianqing school will be the leader of the entire Earth. Earth will be the core of the entire little Tianen galaxy. No one will dare to invade it. The immortal monarch nodded and then asked, what else? Is there anything else? That's all. Zhao Xueqing stood up and retreated behind the immortal monarch. Kong Taechu, cultivate well. The immortal monarch nodded and looked calmly at Jiang Tian. He waved his right hand and a boat flew out from under his sleeve and landed in front of Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian lowered his head and said nothing. No one could see his expression clearly. No one knew what he was thinking. Don't be discouraged. You will be reunited one day, and you will also kill the Hengyu Celestial Sect. I'll be waiting for you. Then, the immortal monarch seemed to be comforting, encouraging, and provoking. He waved his hand and the myriad stone cauldron and the sky-crushing sword were as good as new. The cracks disappeared and they flew to Jiang Tian. Only some purple chi and true thunder of the deity world of 9 heavens were left, but their dermic powers were not affected. Yes, you have to wait. Jiang Tian slowly looked up and said in a low voice. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. They saw that Jiang Tian's eyes had turned scarlet because of the congested blood. They were like a demon or a god, containing a frightening fighting spirit, hatred, and anger. The immortal monarch nodded with a half-smile and looked calmly at Jiang Tian. Suddenly he disappeared. The flashing true thunder of the 9th heavens around him and Zhao Xueqing behind him all disappeared into thin air. The dense purple gas dissipated. Zhao Xueqing's doppelganger didn't even have time to look back at Jiang Tian. At this moment, Jiang Tian and his beloved wife were really separated by endless galaxies, billions of light years. One was on this side of the starry sky, the other was on the other side of the starry sky. Even with Jiang Tian's current cultivation, he might not be able to reach this distance even if he flew for 1,000 or even 10,000 years. Even with the boat left behind by the immortal monarch, it would take at least 100 years to reach the Hengyu Celestial Sect. Mom! Jiang Beibei's cries of despair and reluctance rang out behind Jiang Tian. Chapter 1814. Jiang Tian slowly turned around and walked into the depths of Tianqing School, as if he were a zombie whose soul had been taken away. His eyes were scarlet and bloodshot, but he seemed to be in a daze. There were not many fluctuations in his emotions. With every step he took, he coughed up a mouthful of blood. In the end, his clothes were dyed red and he looked like a man made of blood. There were many cracks on his divine body, which was said to be indestructible. The spirit embryo in his body was in a mess and the divine infant shook violently, almost collapsing. Many divine chains came out of the sky and locked onto Jiang Tian, locking the 9 orifices divine infant. There were even terrifying Dharma laws in the world, suppressing the Dharma power in Jiang Tian's body. Meanwhile, Jiang Tian's power kept dropping from the 5th level of the nascent soul level to the 1st level. His nascent soul was even about to collapse. And yet, ancestral patriarch Shisha, Saint Anpo and the other grand cultivators who had come to watch the ceremony looked at him in awe and bowed to show the highest respect. All the other cultivators on earth knelt on the ground and worshipped him. That was the first time Jiang Tian had really lost since he became a cultivator. However, it wasn't shameful for him to be defeated by a giant of the deity realm. Instead, it made people respect him. Nobody else would dare to face a giant of the deity realm, not even the supreme saints of the central galaxy or the Tao reunion perfected immortals. They wouldn't even be able to withstand an attack from the immortal lord and would die instantly. Jiang Tian was only a nascent soul cultivator, but he had withstood several attacks from a giant of the deity realm. Even though the immortal lord didn't really want to kill him, he was still unbelievably powerful. Master, Heavenly the Arch. Senior. Tang Ling Long by Mu Xue, Long Shengnen, Qi Liqui and Ao Jiao all burst into tears when they saw Jiang Tian stumbling and seriously injured. Don't worry about me. Jiang Tian raised his hand and stopped them. He said with a trembling voice, Everyone, let's go to the disaster area. All the disciples of the Tianqing school, the cultivators of the deity land and the cultivators from other planets looked at Jiang Tian with concern, then left for other places around the world. They threw themselves into disaster relief. Jiang Tian walked step by step into the depths of Tianqing school. Jiang Beibei ran over and threw herself into Jiang Tian's arms. She cried, Daddy, Mommy was snatched away? Don't worry. Jiang Tian squatted down and gently stroked her hair. He said softly, One day, I will bring you across the endless starry sky and stand in front of her again. Jiang Tian, how do you feel? The whole family came over to ask about it. Their eyes were filled with concern, and their eyes were filled with tears. I need to go into seclusion for a while. Jiang Tian waved his hand and went into the depths of Tianqing school. Then he fell to the ground. After a long time, Jiang Tian opened his eyes and immediately meditated with his legs crossed. He took out the god fragments and blood mist he had obtained during the battle with the cultivators of the Big Dipper sect. He absorbed them and refined them to restore his power. My divine body is broken, my divine infant is shaken, my spirit embryo is cracked and my divine laws are suppressed by the laws of heaven. I've been severely injured this time. But the immortal monarch didn't kill me. The deity realm purple chi and the true thunder of the 9 heavens he used can even nourish me. I'll take this opportunity to break them and build them up. I'll break these jars and be completely reborn. Jiang Tian thought to himself. Jiang Tian's divine body, divine infant and divine laws were the most powerful in the universe. There was no room for improvement. However, in Jiang Tian's memory, there was an extremely ethereal and legendary state where the divine body, divine infant and divine laws were completely combined. Once that was achieved, the 3 flowers at one's prominence and the 5 energies at one's origin would be called the ultimate level of the divine infant. Even the children of true gods couldn't compare. Jiang Tian had wanted to merge them before, but he had never achieved it. After all, he had cultivated all 3 powers to the phenomenal success level. It was too risky to cultivate from scratch. If he failed, the loss would be irreversible. Although I've lost a lot of energy and my power has dropped after fighting with the immortal monarch this time, it's a good thing for me. I'll take this opportunity to merge the 3 powers of essence, chi and spirit to lay the most solid foundation for advancing into the soul formation level in the future. Jiang Tian made up his mind. The boat he left behind is a quasi-deity artifact. It can help me cross the sea of stars. No matter what the immortal monarch is up to, Qing'er's power is still too low. I won't be able to meet his requirements for at least 500 years. During this time, Qing'er will be safe. 500 years. It wasn't a long time, but it wasn't short either. For some grand masters in the deity world who sat and watched the changes of the galaxy and the sea, 500 years was just a matter of closing their eyes and taking a nap, stabilizing their realm and refining their dharma spells and divine powers. Some grand cultivators who liked to watch Dharma spells from their palms could take 1,000 or even 10,000 years. But for a universe with turbulent times, 500 years was too long. In the 500 years Jiang Tian had been in, the universe had changed magnificently. Many overlords and geniuses had appeared in the central galaxy. One after another, the Tao reunion overlords looked down on the world. Even Jiang Tian, the Taichu celestial lord who had the potential to go through the heavenly tribulation, had appeared. 500 years is enough for me to ascend to the deity world and compete with the immortal monarch. Jiang Tian's eyes were deep and distant. His battle intent was hidden. He looked up at the sky. His gaze seemed to pass through layers of voids, endless arrays, endless galaxies, reaching the central galaxy and billions of planes. It was as if he could see the supreme world shrouded in endless celestial light that suppressed everything. There were some things and some grudges that Jiang Tian still had to settle with some people even after being reborn for 10,000 years. So what if he was above the 9 heavens? It wasn't like he hadn't fought with him before. Just like that, Jiang Tian closed his eyes and supported his broken body, starting to recover his power and even going further. Even though he was suppressed by layers of Dharma laws and his body was broken at the moment. However, the mysterious technique that Jiang Tian cultivated was truly too terrifying. Every one of them was the most powerful in the universe. As he inhaled and exhaled, a huge amount of vital qi, laws, great Taos, as well as the treasures, blood essences, and spirits of gods used to fight against the Big Dipper silently gathered like a funnel with Jiang Tian as the center. The spirit qi on earth was rich at the moment. The Dharma laws were strengthened and the grand Taos were stable. It was the best place for Jiang Tian to cultivate. The gains from the battle with the Big Dipper were as vast as the sea and couldn't be measured by a car. In the end, even the purple qi and true thunder of the deity world from the immortal monarch were gradually absorbed and refined. Whoosh! The cracks on the surface of Jiang Tian's divine body were quickly healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. His chaotic power, which almost fell out of the nascent soul level, was also slowly and steadily recovering at this moment. Level 1 of the nascent soul level, Level 2, Level 3, Level 3, night fell and a cool breeze came, bringing a hint of coolness. The moonlight shone on Jiang Tian from between the clouds. The sun rose, the sunlight gilding Jiang Tian with a layer of gold. His expression was calm and firm. Even though his Tao robes were tattered, there was a trace of otherworldly aura, as if he was a true immortal of the immortal world, eternally unmoving. The rain fell, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Jiang Tian was still sitting there without moving. He didn't even use his Dharma power to create a shield. He let the rain fall, wetting his hair and clothes almost in the blink of an eye. He was getting close to nature, feeling the world and merging with the grand Taos. Yellow leaves fell and rolled in the air, slowly falling on Jiang Tian's shoulder. Day after day, night after night, wind and rain, Jiang Tian always sat there without moving. He closed his eyes tightly, did not eat or drink, did not care about anything, and cultivated silently like an ascetic monk. He was like a statue or even like a living corpse. Moss grew on his clothes, but his body and aura did not seem to have changed at all. Every 3 months, Tang Linglong and Jiang Beibei would come hand in hand and quietly cut off his crazily long beard and sticky hair for him. They would also wipe his dusty and dirty cheeks. However, he did not dare to mention the matter of bathing and changing clothes to Jiang Tian. As for other mundane matters, he did not even dare to mention them. Occasionally, a disciple would come to the door and look at him with concern, but after kowtowing 3 times and 9 times, they would leave silently, afraid that they would disturb his seclusion. After waiting for 3 years, Jiang Tian finally opened his eyes for the first time. Chapter 1815. After cultivating for 3 years, I've finally refined the energy of the soul formation cultivators and the half-saints of the Baidu sect, as well as the purple qi and true thunder left by the undying Arch. Not only have I recovered to the mid-stage nascent soul level, but I've also reached the peak stage of the nascent soul level. Jiang Tian's eyes revealed a trace of depth as he sighed in his heart. For normal people, it was only 3 years, but for Jiang Tian, who had been accelerated by the time acceleration array disk, it was actually equivalent to 30 years. This was the longest period of seclusion since Jiang Tian was reborn, and it was also the period of seclusion with the greatest harvest. Jiang Tian looked at the nascent soul level with sadness and joy in his eyes. The sad thing was that he realized, just like what Saint Anpo had said, the higher level of the nascent soul level required more energy to continue advancing. Even though the essence chi on earth had been restored and the Dharma laws and Grand Daos had been strengthened, it wasn't enough to support his future cultivation. Jiang Tian had to go to the star ocean and the central galaxy, so he had to bid farewell to his family and friends. The happy thing was that not only had his power recovered, but it had also improved greatly. His spirit embryo was extremely heavy right then, as if it were made of gold. It was gradually turning into a divine treasure palace. The nascent soul was also extremely strong, like a baby growing into a young man. It wasn't far from becoming a god. Rise. Jiang Tian's eyes became deep, as if he were an ancient god who had created the world. He suddenly yelled. Above his head, the clouds and mist actually condensed into 3 huge flowers that shot straight into the 9 heavens. Of the 3 flowers, one was pitch black like a black hole, one was 5-colored, and one was flickering with golden light. They all took form and rose higher and higher. Every single one of them was 50 kilometers wide, like a huge cloud. This is Ancestral Patriarch Shisha, Saint Anpo and the heavenly generals of the heavenly courts were dumbfounded after seeing this. Ancestral Patriarch Shisha, Saint Anpo and the other cultivators from other planets were allowed to stay on Earth because of their contributions after the battle of the Baidu sect and the arrival of the Undying Arch. The spirit chi on Earth had recovered further. The essence chi and the Dharma laws on Earth were much denser than 3 years ago. It was prosperous and had become the cultivation's sacred ground of the entire Little Tianen planet region. Countless soul formation grand cultivators and nascent soul cultivators from the star ocean arrived. However, it was different from when the Big Dipper cultivators aggressively besieged Earth and wanted to take over its nest. These cultivators were all very humble and well-behaved. Moreover, they had to register at the Interstellar Immigration Bureau and obtain a temporary residence certificate. They also had to establish meritorious deeds, slay demons and devils, participate in construction, or pass down their skills and preach the Tao. Only after obtaining enough points would they be able to obtain a renewal and achieve long-term residence. 3 flowers at one's prominence. My God, it was rumored that only return to void stage great sages and even Tao integration stage true immortals would be able to manifest this phenomenon. Why would it appear above Tai Chu's head? Could it be that he has reached the void return stage or even the soul formation stage? Ancestor Shisha's demonic vertical pupils suddenly shrank and her expression changed. No, Grand Primordium is still a nascent soul cultivator, but he's already at the peak of the nascent soul stage. Saint Anpo was so excited that his entire body trembled. According to the ancient records, the 3 flowers at one's prominence doesn't only appear during the void return saints and Tao reunion perfected immortals breakthroughs. It can also appear during the nascent soul and soul formation stage, but it's extremely rare. In essence, the 3 flowers at one's prominence is the ultimate flower formed when the Dharma power, body and divine soul power are gathered to the extreme. It means that Tai Chu's energy has already reached the peak and he can't go any further. He's already at the limit of his current level. The old man has also seen such records before, but he thought it was too illusory. I never thought that Senior Tai Chu would have reached such a level. Another grand cultivator from the Star Ocean said in shock. After the discussion of the grand cultivators from the Star Ocean, everyone finally understood that the 3 flowers at one's prominence were also called the flower of the end and flower of the peak. It meant that the cultivator who formed the flower was already standing at the peak of a level, the top of the mountain, and there was no more path ahead. Cultivators who had stepped into this realm were also known as the strongest. Theoretically speaking, the golden core level was the strongest golden core level, and the nascent soul level was the strongest nascent soul level. However, There were only a few nascent soul cultivators in the entire Tianan planet region or even the entire universe who had formed the three flowers. Even if there were, there would only be one. Could be the divine soul, the body, or the Dharma power. Even in the central galaxy, there might not be more than a few people like Jiang Tian, who had gathered all three flowers at the same time. I've formed the three flowers at one's prominence, which means that I've reached the peak of the golden core level. The next step is to form a divine treasure with my spirit embryo and form a god. I can't go any further, Jiang Tian said. Continuing to cultivate right then wouldn't be of much use to Jiang Tian. He would only be able to strengthen his body and refine his Dharma power. He would only be able to increase the quantity, there wouldn't be any change in quality. When cultivators in the universe reach this level, they would either try to break through or create powerful Dharma treasures and divine powers to protect themselves. They would also study all kinds of arrays and make pills. As he spoke, he stood up and the vines on his legs were gently torn apart. With a wave of his hand, he cast out a dust-dispelling talisman. His entire body was clean and flawless. His ragged clothes were torn apart as he changed into a clean robe and slowly walked out. Congratulations, Tai Chu. You formed the three flowers at one's prominence and reached the peak stage of the nascent soul level. You're only a step away from the soul formation level. Congratulations to Senior Tai Chu for his profound magic power, long life, and forever shaking the sea of stars. Master! Your Majesty, you're out. When Jiang Tian walked out from the depths of the sect, the new Heavenly Court's heavenly generals, the Heavenly Clear Sect cultivators, and even the extraterrestrial powerhouses bowed deeply and kowtowed 3 times and 9 times. When Tang Linglong and the other female disciples saw that Jiang Tian was in high spirits and had recovered to his original state, they were so moved that they shed tears. Jiang Tian nodded and released his immortal will. It immediately covered half of the earth and many images appeared in his mind. Meanwhile, August 9, 2021 AD. It had been 3 years since Jiang Tian defeated the Big Dipper Coalition army. In these 3 years, earth-shaking changes had taken place on Earth. It could be said that there were new changes every day. Swish, swish. Many flying ships flew across the sky. Those flying ships were dozens of feet long and there were many types of them, such as begonia leaves, tigers and leopards, giant beasts and shuttles. They were also powered by different powers. Most of them were driven by controllable nuclear fusion or the power of talisman arrays. The 2 different powers of technology and immortal spells were miraculously blended together. 3 years ago, controllable nuclear fusion technology was only limited to the military, but it had already been widely used in the civilian world. In the world, the spirit chi was getting richer and the Dharma laws were denser. It had already reached the level of the Big Dipper planet region, or even higher. Even many old people who weren't suitable for cultivation had started to practice fitness arts at the moment. They practiced in parks, dojos, and suburbs. Their punches were extremely powerful. It was estimated that the average lifespan of a human would reach 200 years. There were even more geniuses on Earth in the past 3 years. Juniors like Tang Linglong, Sasaki Haisha, Shen Mange, and Marshall D. Minyang had all stepped into the mid-stage of nascent soul realm. After counting, there were already several hundred nascent soul realm heavenly monarchs. Besides, there were thousands of nascent soul cultivators and over 100 soul formation cultivators. It was much more prosperous than the Big Dipper planet when it was at its peak. Dad, you're finally out. Jiang Beibei ran over. She was short and 2 of her front teeth were missing, but she was smiling brightly. She pulled Jiang Tian's sleeve and asked him to hug her. I have a daughter who has just grown up. Jiang Tian beamed and picked up the little girl. After his cultivation, Jiang Tian spent the next few days with his family. He played chess with his grandpa and traveled with his daughter to relax and enjoy his family. On this day, Jiang Tian looked at Jiang Changing and the rest of his family and said with a smile, Grandpa, Dad, Mom, for the next few days, I want to walk around and take a look. Go. Zhang Wanqing's eyes suddenly turned red. She knew that Jiang Tian was probably saying goodbye to his family and friends on Earth. After that, he might go to the Star Ocean and the Central Galaxy to find Zhao Xueqing. Chapter 1816. Knowing that Jiang Tian was going on a trip, Tang Linglong held Jiang Beibei's hand and hurried over. She smiled and said, "Master, you must take Beibei and me with you on this trip." "Never mind. I just want to be alone. You don't have to be involved." Jiang Tian was wearing a simple azure outfit, like an ancient scholar. He chuckled and said, according to the age of this life, Jiang Tian was already in his 30s, but he had lived 2 lives, so he had experienced a lot. Because of the departure of Zhao Xueqing's clone, he had become more gloomy and had a different kind of charm. During your seclusion this time, you've achieved 3 flowers at one's prominence and 5 cheese unification. You've cultivated to the peak of the nascent soul stage and are only 1 step away from the soul formation stage. You've gained a lot. You should be happy, right? Jiang Tian touched Jiang Beibei's head with a gentle look. He walked in the forest with one hand behind his back and the other hand holding Jiang Beibei's hand. He smiled and said, "I'd be lying if I said I wasn't happy. She's the most powerful nascent soul cultivator in the universe. No one in the Central Galaxy, the deity realm and the divine realm can compare to her. More importantly, I'm only 1 step away from reaching the soul formation level and laying a solid foundation." His smile gradually disappeared and his eyes became gloomy again. Tang Linglong held Jiang Beibei's other hand and smiled gently. "Is it because of the arrival of the immortal monarch?" Jiang Tian took a deep breath and said, "The immortal monarch of the immortal monarch world is the immortal monarch. The great powers of the world of immortals have set this up since time immemorial. They used the entire lesser heavenly south as their chessboard, the galaxies as their borders, and the corpses of immortals and demons as their pawns. However, the most important pawn in this game is your mastress. We're entangled in karma and it's heavier than the chains of the Great Path. I even suspect that there's someone even more powerful behind the scenes, someone like the Buddha Lord or the Tao Ancestor. All these years, I swept through the dimensional world, went on expeditions to the ruins of immortality, fought the Big Dipper, and even faced my previous life's master, the undying sovereign. One after another, they came one after another, pressuring me to the point where I couldn't breathe." Jiang Tian's face showed a hint of sadness and exhaustion. He said bitterly, "In the past decade, I've been blessed with great fortune. Although I've gained a lot, much more than the average soul formation cultivators, the immortal monarch didn't kill me. That means everything is under his control. Let me always have a kind of feeling that I can't break free from the shackles. Everything I've gained has instead become like a wedding dress for someone else. It's beyond my control, like a bubble in a dream that can be lost at any time." When he heard his master bare his heart to him, his eyes were filled with deep affection, regret, and gentleness. In a gentle voice, he said, "The number of Dian is 50, but 49 are used. One of them is missing from the way of heaven. It's the only way to survive in a desperate situation. Master, you're entangled in karma and the powerful figures in the immortal world are coveting you. Only by working hard, moving forward firmly, and walking your own path can you grasp this slim chance of survival. This path is very tiring and bitter. But after all, you're the reincarnation of the god of Hongmeng. Your Taoist heart is as firm as a rock. You have great perseverance and divine sense, and you're also determined to die. Your current feelings of exhaustion, emptiness, sadness, and depression are only temporary. You'll definitely be able to walk out of here." She suddenly bowed deeply, her eyes narrowed into beautiful crescents. She smiled mischievously, revealing a rarely seen feminine side, and said, "This disciple was rash. I actually dared to show off my slight skill in front of Master. All of this, Master has crossed bridges in his life, and has walked thousands of times more than I have. He understands it better than I do. Master, you've just finished your closed-door training. What you need is rest, relaxation, and to forget all these troubles for the time being. Once this is over, you'll definitely be able to reinvigorate yourself and regain your fighting spirit." She suddenly pulled out the red blazing bone sword, pointed it at the sky, and shouted, "Look, Those gods and Buddhas are using us as pawns and manipulating our lives. Shall we kill them? Jiang Tian looked at her silently, feeling both amused and warm. It was like a rich man with hundreds of millions of assets suddenly losing $1 million, but he was comforted by a poor friend who was sincere. But Jiang Tian didn't say anything. During his closed-door training, he had thought too much and vaguely understood the true purpose of the immortal emperor's many schemes. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was difficult to escape the fate of being a pawn. At this time, his Taoist heart was lax, and nothing he said would be driven by emotions. His fighting spirit would also be empty and weak. Jiang Tian nodded and said with a smile, "You're right. In fact, there's a recognized rule in the cultivation world of the Central Galaxy. If you want to become a god, you have to become a mortal first. So, not only do I have to say goodbye to my old friends this time, but I also have to relax my body and mind while saying goodbye. I want to experience the world, understand the heavenly laws, meet old friends, talk about the past, and forget those troubles. This trip may take 3 days, 3 years, or 30 years, until I shake off the burden in my heart, regain my Taoist heart, and have the courage to go straight to the Star Ocean. I know Master won't take me with him when he leaves. That's why I'm asking you to let me accompany him this time," Tang Linglong said with a smile. "That's right," Jiang Tian said frankly. "Your mistress is far away from the Star Ocean and must be worried about me every day. I'll feel guilty if I take you with me." "What do you mean? You're guilty?" Tang Linglong said with a mischievous smile. "Mistress is generous and open-minded. She's never suspicious. I've never had any animosity or resentment towards you because I accompanied you. This guilt of yours is entirely because of yourself. If you don't have any feelings for me, why would you feel guilty?" Well, Jiang Tian was stunned. He had been avoiding these women for a long time, but now that he thought about it carefully, he felt that it was more complicated than it could be. He was indeed a simple person when it came to relationships. In his previous life, although he flirted with women everywhere when he was young, it was not true. He was like a naughty child playing around. However, after Zhao Xueqing's death, he regretted it all his life and felt guilty. After he followed his master to the Central Galaxy, although many fairies and saintesses pursued him, he had never been tempted, let alone become Taoist companions. After his rebirth, he also kept himself clean. He waved his sword to cut off the strands of love and kept a distance from many women. Therefore, although he was good at cultivation, he could not understand the word love. He only knew that he loved Zhao Xueqing deeply. At this time, Tang Linglong's question really stumped him. Fortunately, Tang Linglong had been in seclusion for several years and comprehended the Great Tao. She was also much more clear-headed when it came to relationships. She was indifferent and did not linger. She quickly changed the topic and said with a smile, "Then, Master, let's go." "Okay." Jiang Tian nodded and thought for a while. He clapped and said with a smile, "The East Sea is the place where you and I met. Let's go to Linzhou first." But Tang Linglong nodded and said with a smile, "Just like the ancient sages, I have not entered the house 3 times. In the 3 years since I returned to Earth, I have been to disaster relief everywhere and have never set foot in the East Sea." Huaxia, Linzhou. Jiang Tian and Zhao Xueqing's old villa was crowded with tourists, and it was bustling with life. Dear passengers, the important scenic spot we are about to arrive at is the former residence of the master of Tianqing School, the leader of the Myth Alliance, the spiritual leader of the Earth Defense Alliance, the great helmsman of the Spirit Qi Revival, the great pioneer of the new era of the cultivation civilization, the great commander of the anti-Beidou siege, the new master of the heavenly court, the Taichu emperor, the strongest overlord in the Little Tianan Star region, the first divine lord, Kong Taichu's former residence in the East Sea. The tour guide holding a red flag seemed to be showing off her skills. She recited a series of titles without hesitation, which made the surrounding tourists applaud and cheer. But we can finally visit the former residence of the Taichu Divine Lord. In the crowd, Jiang Tian was wearing ordinary casual clothes and holding Jiang Beibei's hand. He looked like an ordinary middle-aged man hiding in the city. He looked at them with a smile. Suddenly, his eyes turned red. Chapter 1817. That was the place where he and Zhao Xueqing got married and where his dream began. But now, even the King's Mansion #1 on Lion Peak had been renovated and turned into a tourist attraction. The Taichu History Museum was built in Linzhou. Thousands of people came to visit every day. At this time, in the courtyard of the villa, there was a bronze statue of Jiang Tian and Zhao Xueqing holding hands. In the display window and on the table, there was a display of Jiang Tian and Zhao Xueqing's life, as well as many battle records. The holographic projection was playing many promotional videos. "Dad, is this where you and Mom lived?" Jiang Beibei looked around curiously and asked. Jiang Tian held her little hand and walked into the living room like an ordinary person, hiding among the tourists. Seeing the things, he thought of her and sighed with emotion. "I'm just a rich kid. I'm as stupid as a cow and as hot-tempered as a tiger. I didn't accomplish anything, but I had a bad temper. But your mom never despised me. I was crazy back then and your mom had to work hard. She had to stay up late every day and take care of me." He stroked the 29-inch TV with a big belly and said with a smile, "But she never complained. She worked hard all the time to make life a little better, even if it was just a little better. Because her father was too poor at the time, she bought the TV outside from a flea market. Technology is developing rapidly now. Holographic projection and VR technology are all used. This kind of old TV can really be considered an antique." Then, a manager walked over and bowed. "Sir, this is a relic. You can't touch it." "Oh, I'm sorry." Jiang Tian smiled and took back his hand. "Jiang, no, Taichu Divine Lord, you're here." The administrator's face was full of surprise, as if he had seen a ghost in broad daylight. "What? The Taichu Divine Lord is here. Are you serious? Isn't the Taichu Divine Lord in seclusion? Why is he here?" This shout startled everyone. For a time, the tourists surrounded Jiang Tian so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. They all bowed to Jiang Tian, their faces filled with admiration. "Let me have a look." Jiang Tian cupped his hands and said with a warm expression, "Sorry to disturb everyone." "Not at all. What are you talking about? It's our honor to meet the Taichu Divine Lord. Grand Primordium Divine Lord, take your time. We'll back off." Everyone said hurriedly. Jiang Tian was transcendent and otherworldly. In the eyes of the crowd, he was like a god. In the eyes of the crowd, perhaps giving him some peace was the greatest respect. However, at this time, a beautiful figure walked against the flow of people and quickly walked over. She said excitedly, "Jiang Tian, it's you." The woman was in her 30s, but she had maintained herself very well. She looked like a 28-year-old girl, but her pair of clear, beautiful eyes revealed a bit of depth and firmness, which added a bit of a different kind of charm to her. The nameplate on her chest also revealed her identity. She was the curator of the Kong Taichu archive in Linzhou. "Lu Yiting?" Jiang Tian smiled warmly and said, "How did you become a curator? Don't you care about your natural beauty? How did you become a curator?" Lu Yiting was wearing a black business suit. Her slender legs were wrapped in thin black stockings and high heels, but she still looked smart and capable. She looked at Jiang Tian excitedly, and her eyes were slightly red. She smiled and said, "Natural beauty is already dead. Why do you mention this?" That Jiang Tian was slightly stunned. However, he immediately understood. With the recovery of spirit qi and the prosperity of the cultivation civilization, the lifespan of human beings could be doubled. As long as mortals practiced breathing techniques, they would not age. It was normal for natural beauty to be abandoned by the times. To be exact, I took the initiative to close the business. Lu Yiting smiled and said, "However, I seem to have been reborn. I talk to Shen Lu and Zheng Li here every day, or tell the tourists about your deeds. I'm very happy." "Is this Beibei? She's so cute. She looks exactly like her." Lu Yiting squatted down and hugged Jiang Beibei with a face full of affection. "Hello, Aunt Yiting," Jiang Beibei said sweetly. The business you valued the most is dead, but you've been reborn? Interesting. Jiang Tian smiled and seemed to understand something. It's not easy for you to come back. Go and have a look. Lu Yiting suddenly remembered that Zhao Xueqing had been taken away by the immortal monarch for 3 years. She could imagine Jiang Tian's mood. She said with slightly red eyes, "Don't worry. I've asked people to close the shop. No one will disturb you." She winked at Tang Linglong, and the two quietly left. It was on this sofa that I rewrote the prescription of the muscle-nourishing ointment. Your mother thought that I didn't know anything and was writing nonsense to ruin her plans. She wanted to pinch my ear. Jiang Tian pulled his daughter to sit on the old sofa in the living room. His eyes were full of tenderness as he smiled and said, "However, this is not the original sofa. To put it nicely, your mother is thrifty and diligent. To put it bluntly, she is stingy and haggles over every penny. Life was difficult at that time. After your mother and I moved to the King No. 1 villa, she rented this villa to someone else. I guess that family thought the sofa was shabby, so they replaced it. Your Auntie Eating probably found the original photo and found someone to make a similar model. However, the design is exquisite. It's exactly the same. She even made it look old with care. Even the holes made by the cigarette are exactly the same. Dad, you're so annoying. Since it's exactly the same, it's the original. Why do you think so much?" Jiang Beibei couldn't sit still. She ran around and suddenly turned back and said, "Since it's exactly the same, it's the original?" The childish and naive words flashed through Jiang Tian's mind like a bolt of lightning, illuminating a corner of the fog. Of course. Since it's exactly the same, of course it's the original. Even if it's not the same, it's still the original. Jiang Beibei said seriously, "Dad, I heard Uncle Dahe talk to me about cultivation. Mortals are just mortal bodies. The foundation elixir is the life of true essence. The bodies of nascent soul and soul formation cultivators can be formed by laws. The old monsters of void return can even live in the void and become one with heaven and earth. Dad, you've changed a lot from a mortal to a nascent soul cultivator, but you're still you. Beibei, you're good. You can teach me now." Jiang Tian laughed heartily. With a gratified expression, he said unhurriedly, "Not only will the objective existence change over a long period of time, but even the consciousness and thoughts will undergo earth-shaking changes. But I can tell you that I'm still your father. You can answer this question. But you may not answer the next question. Let me tell you a funny story. Auntie Linglong read it to me before I went to bed last night." Jiang Beibei put her hands behind her back and said softly, "There is a ship called the Ship of Theseus, which can sail on the sea for hundreds of years. This is attributed to the fact that it has a lot of spare parts and can be repaired and replaced continuously. As long as a piece of wood rots, it will be replaced, and so on until all the functional parts are no longer the original ones. The question is the ship that was created in the end still the original Ship of Theseus, or is it a completely different ship? If it's not the original ship, then at what point is it no longer the original ship? If we use the old parts of the Ship of Theseus and directly build a new ship, then which of the two ships is the real Ship of Theseus?" What an interesting story. That's right. Is it still that ship? Which of the two ships is the real Ship of Theseus? Jiang Tian listened with a smile, but his face was as calm as a lake, and his heart was like thunder. Lightning once again shone through the fog. Chapter 18:18. Dad, don't underestimate me. Kids these days are very knowledgeable. Jiang Beibei put her hands behind her back and said, "Let's not talk about cultivation. Let's not talk about cultivators. Even for mortals, according to the research of scientists, the cells in the human body only need 200 days to die. However, humans won't die because they can constantly regenerate their cells. This is equivalent to saying that after 20 days, this mortal is no longer the same as the original mortal from a physiological point of view. But isn't he the original him?" She looked at Jiang Tian motionlessly, as if waiting for Jiang Tian's answer. Jiang Tian nodded. "But why do you think it's a new boat and not an old one? This is a new sofa and not an old one. In essence, it's a change of composition. Those tourists don't know the inside story, so they think it's an old sofa. Many people were taking photos here just now. Jiang Beibei argued. Jiang Tian was shocked. Lightning flashed again and illuminated the fog. I understand now. I finally understand. He looked up at the 9 heavens and his eyes gradually deepened. His gaze was as sharp as a sword. Zhao Xueqing wasn't used by the immortal lord to seal the 10,000 orifices demonic infant. Her body and the 10,000 orifices demonic infant were born together with Star Destroyer. No wonder Zhao Xueqing's birth was so strange. Her mother didn't have any sexual activity and suddenly got pregnant. The 10,000 orifices demonic infant needs 13 umbilical cords, but Zhao Xueqing also needs 13 umbilical cords when she was pregnant with Jiang Beibei. Star Destroyer is just a simulation of the womb of a woman with the immortal body of the immortal phoenix. It's like 2 parts combined to form a Zhao Xueqing with the 10,000 orifices demonic infant. She bears the karma on behalf of a certain supreme being. Ordinary people fear karma and mighty people fear karma. Even Buddha and Tao ancestor who have thousands of Tao in one body is also karma. The more karma one had, the greater the calamity one would suffer. It would be difficult to transcend and live forever. Only by severing karma or allowing another to take his place would he be able to transcend the Taos of the 3 dimensions and truly attain immortality without cause or effect, without life or death, without beginning or end. And Zhao Xueqing is the substitute of this mighty person, the Nirmanakya. For Tao integration perfected immortals, 3,000 years would be spring, 3,000 years would be autumn, and 10,000 years would be a single spring and autumn. However, when their lifespan was exhausted, they would return to the heavens. The Hongmeng god had created a world and formed a universe. How terrifying was his power! However, the universe was still not eternal. It was rumored that at the peak of the Big Bang, everything in the world would turn into a soup of particles. Everything would be in a state of chaos before returning to the singularity. This Hongmeng god would also be implicated by his own world's great Tao and return to dust. This Black Hand is truly a supreme almighty. Jiang Tian suddenly sighed, and his mood became even more gloomy. Although he had heard of this realm before, even when he ascended to Hongmeng, he did not dare to covet it. Do you understand? Are you scared? You should have understood long ago. You should have been scared long ago. Suddenly, a strange laughter sounded. It was as ear-piercing as the cry of an old crow. Jiang Beibei also saw it. A strange person suddenly appeared next to Jiang Tian like a ghost. He trembled slightly and lowered his head to laugh. His hair and beard were long and messy, and they intertwined with each other to cover his face. Only a pair of eyes filled with confusion and fear could be seen. He looked at the blue and clear sky in a daze. Dad, this strange person, Jiang Beibei was so frightened that she stumbled back and sat on the ground. Her small mouth cracked open and tears rolled down. Why are you crying? I'm your dad too. The strange old man glared at Jiang Beibei fiercely. Beibei, don't be afraid. Jiang Tian got up and hugged Jiang Beibei in his arms. He smiled and comforted her softly. This is Dad's dead self. It's my life's memory and experience. You can also see it as an external manifestation of my immortal will. He revealed his true self to talk to me and solve my problems together. Ha, I'm indeed the fear and worry in his heart. I'm the desire and worry in his heart. I'm the anger and hatred in his heart. I'm the bestial and demonic thoughts in his heart. But it's hard to control. If I go crazy, I won't even recognize my own family and kill you. The strange person suddenly turned his head and glared fiercely at Jiang Beibei with his turbid eyes. He bared his teeth and threatened her mischievously. Jiang Beibei realized that the strange person looked very similar to her dad and was so fierce. She couldn't help but cry out in fear. Dad has become old and ugly. Tang Linglong and Lu Yiting heard the commotion and rushed in. When they saw this strange scene, they were so frightened that they turned pale. I can't do anything to you. I can crush you to pieces now or suppress you in my heart. Don't mess around anymore. Jiang Tian's true body berated. My heart aches for scaring my daughter. After all, she's my flesh and blood. I'm just playing. Why are you so nervous? He suddenly saw Lu Yiting and Tang Linglong. His eyes were burning with greed. He laughed and said, "My lord, these two girls are so smooth and they're interested in you. Why don't you accept them? You're just pretending. Take them all into your harem. Let's do more exercise tonight." Lu Yiting blushed and looked at Tang Linglong in surprise. Where did this strange person come from? Why does he look so similar to Jiang Tian? In the cultivation world, it's called passing self. It corresponds to ego and Tao ego. According to my teacher, when one is in the transcendent mortal stage and experiences the mortal world, demonic thoughts will appear. Tang Linglong said softly. Lu Yiting was puzzled. She had little contact with cultivation. Not many people on earth knew that the transcendent mortal stage was a step before reaching the deity transformation stage. Tang Linglong scratched her head, thought for a while, and said, "You don't understand cultivation. But you can understand it as the ID, ego, and superego in philosophy. The ID is the combination of all kinds of instinctive impulses and evil thoughts in Jiang Tian's heart. It doesn't understand the law of morality and blindly pursues satisfaction without caring about anything. Oh, I understand. It's like multiple personality disorder, but Jiang Tian can show it. But it turns out that Jiang Tian also has thoughts about us." Lu Yiting was very interested. She giggled and blushed, revealing a touch of charm. Who doesn't have dirty thoughts in their heart? He's not a god. You're so beautiful, how can he not have any thoughts about you? Tang Linglong smiled and said, "However, the old saying is right. Obscenity is not about the heart, but about the heart. No one is perfect. This is an instinct. At least with my teacher's current cultivation, he can't see through it. It's just that my teacher has deep feelings for Sister Qingya, so he can suppress it. The reason why I'm showing my past self now is not because of love and to get rid of my inner demons. It should be related to the ancient arrangements of the mighty figures of the celestial world. To be careful, I need to look at my heart and soul to see through everything." You two little girls are smiling so beautifully and shamelessly. Why don't we have fun together tonight? The vanishing self, Freak stood up, his eyes burning with passion. "That's enough." Jiang Tian blushed and shouted. The strange man jumped 3 feet high and said angrily, "What are you shouting for? Can't you enjoy yourself after fighting for a lifetime? Continue playing and dancing." At this time, another figure suddenly appeared. He was wearing a Taoist robe and was as handsome as a god. He was bathed in immortal light and divine light, exuding a sacred aura like that of an immortal Buddha. He stepped forward and stepped on the strange man. He flicked his sleeves and said coldly, "Evil creature, you only think about dirty things all day. If you continue to pester me, I'll stomp you to death." At this time, Jiang Tian's true self, and past self appeared at the same time. One was open and aboveboard, like a god or a Buddha, as emotionless as the great Tao. The other was simple and unadorned, lingering in the mortal world, but cold and restrained. The other was timid, wretched, and impulsive. But there was a bit of affection and cuteness. Chapter 18-19. Tao, spare me, I won't do it again. I won't do it again. The eccentric was trembling in fear, but he didn't forget to wink at Lu Yiting and Su Qianxi. He was so naughty and wretched that the two girls didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That Tao only appeared for a brief moment, and after suppressing the strange man, it instantly turned into specks of light that filled the air and disappeared. Lu Yiting saw that the eccentric seemed to be more honest. She smiled and said, "I've asked Shen Lu and his wife to have dinner together tonight." But Jiang Tian nodded slightly and went out with the eccentric. In order to let Jiang Tian meet more acquaintances, they chose the restaurant of an old friend. This old friend was Sister Li, the widow of an anti-narcotics police officer. Back then, she used to help Jiang Tian's family. After Jiang Tian became famous, he also helped her deal with Yi Wudao's son, Yi Ji, who kept harassing her. In the end, when he fought with Yi Tian'er, He also uprooted Yi Wudao's entire family. He also bought a piece of land for Sister Li. Sister Li worked with other businessmen and developed this place into a food street, including her own restaurant. Elder Sister Li had prepared a private room for Jiang Tian. Right now, she was living a very happy life and was very grateful to Jiang Tian. Her son had grown up and was also a police officer, but he had already cultivated and was a qi refinement expert. He even specially rushed over to offer Jiang Tian a toast. This made Jiang Tian feel a faint sense of gratification, and he sighed ruefully. Shen Lu and his wife's son could already learn to walk, and he looked just like Shen Lu. Although Shen Li's shares in many consortiums were almost all plundered when the monsters wreaked havoc on the earth, and he was now only a middle-level person, he was still very satisfied with everything in front of him. This was a very happy family. Being with these simple people, Jiang Tian felt that he had never been so calm since he was reborn. Memories came to his mind. These memories belonged to his previous life, when he hadn't been taken away by the immortal monarch and set foot in the central galaxy. At that time, the stars in the sky were just theoretical stars in his eyes. They didn't know how prosperous the cultivation civilization was there and how deep and terrifying the sea of stars was. In his previous life, Jiang Tian was like an ignorant child. For the next few days, Shen Lu and his wife accompanied Jiang Tian to play in Linzhou. On this day, Tang Linglong received a call saying that Mr. Tang Guizhu was critically ill and was on his deathbed. Jiang Tian, Tang Linglong, and their daughter went to visit the Tang family. Tang Guizhu was already very old. Although he had taken a lot of elixirs over the years, it was still difficult to beat fate. He was already on the verge of death. Of course, with Jiang Tian's mana, he could still prolong his life if he forcefully used it. However, Tang Guizhu did not allow Jiang Tian to do so. My physical body has already decayed. Even if I forcefully extend it, I won't be able to last long. I'll have to trouble teacher Jiang to do it again. Let's just leave it to fate. Tang Guizhu was very open-minded. He held Jiang Tian's hand and said softly. Now, the 6 paths of reincarnation had been established. Yi Tianren was in charge of the reincarnation of Yin souls. Those who had meritorious deeds, even if they died, had a chance to continue their consciousness. They could either enter the underworld and become a ghost cultivator's messenger of death, or they could be received by the messenger of death and be reincarnated. Sure enough, Jiang Tian saw a ghost cultivator's messenger of death. He was already waiting in the ward. However, he was a ghost cultivator and his mana was not bad. If he wasn't a cultivator like Jiang Tian, ordinary people wouldn't be able to see him. At the moment when Tang Guizhu's physical body died, the ghost cultivator's messenger of death used a magic tool to hook Tang Guizhu's soul. He came to a paper boat and carefully nourished it with the magic tool. Then, he sat on the paper boat and crossed the sky with him. About 10 minutes later, in the delivery room of Linzhou's First People's Hospital, there was a loud and clear cry of a baby. The family immediately cheered. When the baby was carried out by the nurse, they all scrambled to surround him. This family was a rich family. Moreover, they had already embarked on the path of cultivation. In such a family, if it wasn't for the fact that the baby's fate was full of misfortune, he shouldn't have suffered too much. The baby looked around curiously. Although his eyes were very pure, there was actually a trace of age in them. However, this age quickly passed away, and he once again became confused and ignorant. He's finally gone. Jiang Tian retracted his gaze and sighed softly. Tang Guizhu was once a giant. He had made contributions in both the military and the martial arts world. Yi Tianren and the messengers of death of the underworld wanted to help him reincarnate. They used their mana to nourish him and deliberately protect the memories of his previous life. However, they still didn't succeed. At least, they didn't succeed completely. Jiang Tian rebuilt the underworld and reconstructed the reincarnation cycle in order to use the experiences and memories of the deceased's previous life. However, this 6 paths of reincarnation was, after all, man-made. There were still various loopholes and flaws. The success rate was less than 1%. At this moment, there was only a very faint wisp of remnant soul in the baby's mind. Furthermore, as his memories grew, his past memories might very well be completely suppressed and vanish into thin air. What is life and what is death? Hearing the sorrowful cries of the Tang family, recalling Tang Guizhu's life, and hearing the joyous chatter of the newborn family, full of anticipation for the baby's future, Jiang Tian sighed softly. Was the baby now another Tang Guizhu? I think it's unfair to that child. The strange man revealed a disdainful expression and snorted coldly. He was originally a brand new life. Why did you forcibly inject the memories of an old man into him? Fortunately, although he is a branch, when the old tree dies in the future, he will be a new tree. Kong Teichu, you are not a mighty figure, but you want to imitate the actions of a mighty figure. You want to manipulate the fate of others and use their lives as chess pieces. Isn't that the pot calling the kettle black? What is life? What is death? Jiang Tian sighed again, as if comprehending. It's very simple. The eccentric scratched his dirty scalp. Suddenly, he pointed at a puddle under his feet and said, "It's raining heavily today. The rainwater is life, but when it enters this puddle, it becomes stagnant water. But is the water really dead? It will turn into clouds and become rain again in the future. This cycle repeats. But you can't say that the rain in the future is today's rain." Lightning once again lit up in Jiang Tian's heart when he heard the words of the vanishing self, eccentric. Moreover, this lightning was even brighter and longer-lasting than before. Clusters of fog regarding the comprehension of life and death were completely illuminated. Jiang Tian's heart suddenly became bright. At this moment, he had almost succeeded in becoming immortal. His understanding of the mortal world and the great Tao of life and death had reached a very deep level. It could be said that if he wanted to enter the soul formation realm, the success rate would be at least 50%. However, he still didn't stop comprehending. Instead, he continued to experience the mortal world and the great Tao. Holding his daughter's hand, he strolled in Linzhou with the eccentric, enjoying the rare peace without any impatience. The strange man who suddenly disappeared pointed at a huge strange tree and said, "That's right. Jiangdan, look at that tree. What is a leaf? What is a branch? What is a stem? What is a root? Is that a tree or a forest?" That tree was a very common banyan tree in the Lingnan area. It was originally very old, and with the nourishment after the recovery of spiritual qi, it had grown especially large. There were countless branches on the branches, and many of the roots hung down to the ground and sank into the soil. Jiang Tian saw that the real trunk of the tree had been riddled with holes by lightning, sun, and insects. There was not much vitality. However, the new roots were vigorous and full of vitality. Some of them had even torn off the roots and vines of the old tree and formed new independent trees. What is a leaf? What is a branch? What is a stem? What is a root? Is this a tree or a forest? Jiang Tian sighed. His eyes were shining. For the next few days, Jiang Tian and the eccentric sat under the tree to comprehend. They didn't meditate but stood and sat casually. It was very relaxing. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The heavy rain poured down. Jiang Tian and the eccentric were drenched, but they still stayed under the big banyan tree, unwilling to leave. I have an answer. Whether it is the ship of Theseus, the cycle of life and death, or the primary and secondary branches, I have my own answer. Whether it is right or wrong, I have an answer. A few days later, Jiang Tian seemed to have understood something. His eyes were filled with joy, and he felt that his soul was much clearer. He got up, shook off the leaves on his body, chuckled, and walked into the distance. Chapter 1820. The prosperity of the mortal world, the fresh lives, the companions, the support of each other, all kinds of fun and leisure. This life belongs to us. No matter what happens in the future, we can't let the grand cultivators take it away or disturb our state of mind. That was how Jiang Tian felt. I have a sword in my hand and I can kill all the gods and Buddhas in the world. Suddenly, Jiang Tian felt an unprecedented fighting spirit surging in his heart and he couldn't help but shout. At this moment, the last bit of doubt in his mind was also gone. His heart became lively again, as if the dust had been washed away. In the distance, Tang Linglong and Lui Ting looked at each other and smiled. They seemed to have seen the old Jiang Tian come back. Then, Jiang Tian started to prepare for his departure from Earth. This time, Jiang Tian only took his daughter and the black dog with him. The universe seemed to be safe, but it was actually extremely dangerous. Apart from the orderly cultivation planet regions, most of the places were still chaotic barren areas. Besides, there were also a lot of universe beasts that weren't tamed by humans and were devouring energy and lives everywhere. Jiang Tian's trip this time had already gone beyond the Milky Way and several galaxies, which was much longer than the Beidou expedition to Earth. Such a long interstellar journey would be dangerous even for soul formation cultivators. Those cultivators would only be a burden. The black dog was a purebred purple golden true dragon. Even though it was weak and timid at the moment, it could definitely resist. In fact, Fu Heishui and Fu Heishui also wanted to go to the central galaxy with Jiang Tian to find the mother bat to continue their lineage. However, ancestral patriarch Shisha of the Ophiuchus constellation told the two brothers that there was a divine bat clan in the Ophiuchus constellation. There wasn't a single male in the clan, and they had been living with the art of creation all these years. The two of them immediately ignored Jiang Tian and hurried there. Besides, many soul formation grand cultivators in the Little South Heaven planet region had also sent news that the immortal emperor had indeed fulfilled his promise. The graveyards of the deity fiends on all the planets had been adjusted and repaired. The violent planets like the third planet of the South Gate had also returned to normal. In the foreseeable future, the Little Southern Sky Star Zone would be the most stable and suitable place for cultivation in the entire Milky Way. It was even equivalent to the edge of the central galaxy. Under such circumstances, bringing Earth cultivators like Tang Linglong or the new Heavenly Court into the central galaxy was not worth it. Moreover, Earth had become the cultivation core of the entire Little Southern Heaven Grand Star Zone. The many starry sky spirit guiding arrays set up by the immortal emperor were running like eternal stars. Vast and surging spiritual energy was drawn from the third South Gate, the Ophiuchus constellation, and the immortal demon's stellar graveyard in the Fomalhaut constellation and continuously poured into Earth. The tide of spirit chi swept across the land, and the laws and great Tao continued to strengthen, nourishing this awakening ancient planet. Jiang Tian believed that Earth's peak period had yet to come. The current Earth was like a toddler learning how to walk. It was far from growing into its prime. But he couldn't not bring his daughter along. She was the continuation of Zhao Xueqing's life, and also his caring little jacket. Since she was born, Jiang Tian had rarely been with her, which made Jiang Tian feel very guilty. When Jiang Tian left, it was already after the Spring Festival. Nobody saw him off, so as to avoid the sadness of separation. And in those few months, Jiang Tian had almost traveled all over the world and said goodbye to everyone he needed to say goodbye to. The sound of firecrackers could be heard and the snow couldn't cover the lights. Jiang Tian had his hands behind his back and Jiang Beibei was riding a big black dog that looked like a pony, walking on the street of Sidoni together. There were pedestrians everywhere. Some were rushing to restaurants, while others were looking at the Dharma artifacts on the stalls on both sides of the street. The neon lights of the shops were reflected in the river, flowing slowly and bustling. People were coming and going. It was very lively. Jiang Tian was wearing a blue robe and a wooden hairpin. He walked slowly with his hands behind his back, looking around as if he had already blended in. Every day, Sidoni took in a huge amount of resources. Resources from countless planets came to Earth from all directions in the abandoned planet region, then went to other planets through Earth. There were many cultivators and nascent soul cultivators on Earth, as if they had returned to the era of overlords in the ancient times. Every step was a memory. Jiang Tian seemed to have returned to that time. He had fought side by side with Zhao Xueqing again and again, conquering and killing for this land. On the left, there were couples walking on the street, mothers holding their children's hands, young men and women hugging passionately under the blooming fireworks and gluttons looking for delicious food. They were so real and the mortal world was so real. Jiang Tian suddenly felt a bit reluctant. He also understood why Zhao Xueqing had decided to give in at the last moment and follow the immortal monarch. The mortals of this world loved delicious food, were passionate about life, chased after charm, calculated benefits, and thought about things. They had all kinds of emotions. They were not elegant and otherworldly. They were not like those so-called almighty giants whose hearts were as cold as iron and as steady as a rock. However, they lived like real people. This world was too beautiful. It was worth facing thousands of soldiers and horses, and it was also worth enduring humiliation and dragging out an ignoble existence. It would also become better in the future. That's strange. Since when did the abandoned planet region become so orderly? 3,000 years ago, I passed by the Ophiuchus region. The cultivators there would draw their swords at the slightest disagreement. There was no order to speak of. But when we went to the Ophiuchus region, they started to restrain the power and gradually formed a kingdom of cultivators. A middle-aged man in a blue Taoist robe stroked his beard as he looked around curiously. The Milky Way is very far from the core of the universe. There's no civilization and order. It's always been called the abandoned planet region and the graveyard of the deities and demons. It's isolated from the world. How did it become so prosperous? I heard that they're forming the Little Southern Sky Planet Region Federation group with the solar system as the core. The entire Little Southern Sky Planet region will be peaceful forever, and communication and development will be the theme for a while. That's really rare. A girl in the prime of her youth spoke softly. She looked extremely charming and had a strange expression on her face. According to my investigation, a genius called Kong Teichu was born. Although he's a nascent soul cultivator, he has the power of a half-saint. He might be the reincarnation of a grand cultivator. Another young man in golden armor was apparently the core of the three. There seemed to be talismans flashing in his eyes as he spoke with a deep voice. What? Kong Teichu is so powerful. If our divine prince takes him in as a subordinate, won't we have another powerful general? The middle-aged man in a robe and the charming woman exclaimed together. Their eyes almost popped out in disbelief. They were masters from the Magpie Plume Planet province, under the Saint Origin world. They took super lightspeed Dharma artifacts and even used wormholes. It took them 20 years to arrive on Earth. The Saint Origin world was located at the edge of the central galaxy and belonged to the core of the universe. It was a prosperous place with many geniuses and a few sacred-grade soul formation cultivators. However, they had never seen a monster with the power of a half-saint while being a nascent soul cultivator. While the three of them were talking, they didn't know that Jiang Tian had already walked past them with Jiang Beibei. "Dad, I miss Grandpa and Grandma so much," Jiang Beibei said with tears in her eyes. "Little master, don't cry. We'll be back when we become more powerful. Besides, the black jade Qilin will come and force me to be responsible for her. I'm so scared." The black-haired dog's words also contained a lot of information. Let's go." Jiang Tian looked back in the direction of the Tianqing school one last time. The next moment, a boat went straight into the Star Ocean. Destination: Saint Origin World in the Central Galaxy. Chapter 1821. In the lonely universe, the sky was filled with stars and a small boat was sailing. The black-haired dog sat at the end of the boat and looked at Earth. Suddenly, he said pitifully, "Master, I'm suddenly so scared. Will there be any terrifying astral beasts?" "Wow, Uncle Blackie, that's Mars, right? That's the ruins of deity, right? It's so vast. Ophiuchus, right?" Jiang Beibei, on the other hand, was very excited. She held Jiang Tian's sleeve and pointed at the constellations in the sky, trying to identify them with interest. "Yes, Bei is very accurate." A hint of tenderness flashed in Jiang Tian's eyes. The next moment, Jiang Tian took out the heaven-severing sword and gently swung it in the air like a paddle. In silence, the boat traveled through the endless void, passing many planets from Earth to the edge of the solar system in a blink. The journey of the Voyager, which used to be the crystallization of human aerospace technology, took decades to complete, but it only took a second for the boat to travel. Jiang Tian skipped a light year or even a few light years every time he swam. Even the unsetting sun, which had the expertise of artifact forging and technology on Earth, would need dozens of days to travel from the solar system to the South Gate system. However, this time, it only took a few seconds for the boat to travel. Even the cultivators of the Big Dipper, who were the most advanced in space travel in the entire Little Tianan planet region, would be dumbfounded when they saw this speed. When they first traveled to Earth from the Big Dipper, it also took a few years for them to arrive. However, if Jiang Tian traveled from Earth to the Big Dipper, it would only take a few days. This terrifying speed had already surpassed that of a void-returned saint and was comparable to a Tao reunion perfected immortal. In the Southgate system, Jiang Tian stopped for a while and slowly approached the third planet of the Southgate. The array there had indeed been adjusted by the immortal the Arch. Layers of deity arrays locked the deity's body, and the 9-heaven deity seal kept suppressing and destroying it, turning the energy of the deity's body into spirit chi and dharma laws, which were then injected into Earth. "You're a man of your word." Jiang Tian had a faint smile on his face. No one knew what he was thinking. After that, Jiang Tian set off again. The boat carried Jiang Tian and the others like a leaf floating across a clear lake. They flew silently across the universe and arrived at the edge of the Little South Heaven planet region in half a day. That speed was comparable to that of a Tao reunion perfected immortal. However, not even Tao reunion perfected immortals could do it as silently as Jiang Tian, without creating a dimension chaos hole or tearing apart the laws of heaven and earth. On the one hand, it was thanks to the boat. More importantly, Jiang Tian had already attained the 3 flowers at once prominence and was a nascent soul that had perfected the limitless realm. The biggest difference between a nascent soul stage cultivator and a normal nascent soul stage cultivator is that they are like the children of gods that were born and raised by the universe. They are like the young masters of any place in this universe. No matter which star system one arrived in, they would instantly receive the recognition of the heavens and earth and obtain the support of their status. They would be able to naturally use the Dharma laws and Tao of this land, split the star ocean with a finger and cross the world with a step. Not only would they not be affected by the outside world when it comes to using the power of the heavens and earth, they would also receive the help of the heavens and earth. Even void-returning saints and Tao reunion perfected immortals might not be able to compare to them. Jiang Tian felt the subtle feeling of the close connection between the nascent soul and the world as he rode. Right then, his nascent soul was like an engine that burned eternally. The essence chi and dharma laws in the world were like endless energy that poured into the nascent soul. It didn't consume any of the nascent soul's dharma power and could still provide a terrifying amount of power for the boat. Mortals cultivated the outside world, while gods cultivated themselves. So, the nascent soul stage cultivators and soul formation cultivators in the mortal world would naturally receive the recognition of the heavens and earth in their own world. They could do whatever they wanted and were omnipotent. However, once they arrived in other star systems, they would often run into difficulties. Even sacred-grade soul formation cultivators could use their power in other star systems. After all, the Dharma laws were similar to the Grand Tao, but they still needed time. For example, Han Ming had only mastered the Dharma laws and Grand Tao after 2 years at the entrance of Earth. And yet, even sacred-grade nascent soul cultivators and soul formation cultivators would immediately lose the power to control the world once they entered the Fiend realm, the Ghost realm, or the Dimensional Storms, where the Dharma laws and Grand Tao had changed drastically. They could only rely on their own true essence or the Dharma laws they had condensed, which greatly reduced their power. As for normal nascent soul cultivators and soul formation cultivators, they would even be destroyed by the Grand Tao laws when they arrived in such places. That was also the reason why the grand cultivators in the mortal world rarely went deep into the other worlds. After all, he was a grand cultivator who could do whatever he wanted in the mortal world. In the other worlds, even a few nascent soul cultivators of the alien races would be able to make him lose face. Soul formation cultivators, especially. Most of them had their own divine regions, where their Dharma power was almost infinite and they were immortal. Even nascent soul cultivators would be useless. Not even a saint who was a level higher would be able to kill a soul formation cultivator in the divine regions easily. And yet, once they left the divine regions and lost the power of Dharma laws, the so-called soul formation cultivators would only be powerful nascent soul formation cultivators. Such soul formation cultivators would have a high risk of losing their lives. They might even lose their lives if they were careless and encountered a disaster or a powerful beast. They were almost like gods in their own territories, but they would have to risk their lives in the other worlds and lose most of their power and power. Which cultivator would be willing to take such a risk to explore the other worlds? Why would they feel uncomfortable? In fact, not only the other worlds, Jiang Tian knew about it. In many ancient chaos planets and forbidden lands, there were laws and Taoist rules that forbade the use of the natural energies and laws of the outside world. As a result, most cultivators would lose 90% of their power. There were also many such forbidden areas in the universe. So, the top sacred grounds and celestial sects made their disciples practice body-tempering arts because they were afraid of falling into such a situation. The divine realm is obviously different. Nascent soul cultivators in the divine realm cultivate themselves. They combine their nascent soul, body and soul into one and develop their own world and universe. The Dharma power in their bodies will be endless without relying on external objects. So, even if they enter the other worlds or forbidden lands with different Dharma laws, they won't lose too much of their power. That way, they can quickly integrate into the worlds with different Dharma laws and still maintain their powerful combat abilities. Just like those divine beasts and monster beasts who rely on their own bodies and divine powers. More importantly, the nascent soul cultivators in the divine realm cultivate their inner world and their own universe, which is prepared to become the Hongmeng divine fruit of creation one day. They have different starting points and different horizons. They see different things and pursue different Dharma fruits. Jiang Tian was full of emotions. He had only cultivated a sacred grade nascent soul in his previous life, not a divine grade one. He had slowly learned those things after he formed the chaotic 9 orifices divine infant. In addition, he had gone through a lot to reach the immortal state in Hongmeng in his previous life and had a better understanding of the wonders of a divine-grade nascent soul. His own Dharma laws were applicable everywhere and he would be recognized by the world immediately. Cultivating himself and forming an inner world meant that he would never lose control of the Dharma laws and he would always be invincible. Chapter 1822. In fact, even now, Jiang Tian could not figure out the immortal emperor's true attitude, whether he was an enemy or a friend. Moreover, even if he was an enemy, controlling the fate of Jiang Tian and Zhao Xueqing, he was not the real mastermind behind the scenes. He could only be regarded as a white glove of the supreme magnate. Whether he was forced to do it or did it on his own accord, and what kind of role he played, was still unclear. The real mastermind's strength and status had reached an unimaginable level. There were only a few dozen people who stood proudly at the top of the immortal world or the divine realm. I'm also ridiculous. In front of tigers and wolves, I still consider the cause and effect for them. No matter who the mastermind is, no matter whether the immortal emperor was forced to do it or did it on his own accord, as long as he wants to control my fate, I will still unsheath my sword and cut through all obstacles. Jiang Tian's eyes were cold, and he decided not to think about it. After all, it was not time to unsheath his sword. Before that, the mastermind and the immortal emperor had to carefully cultivate Zhao Xueqing and would not hinder his progress. The most important thing now was to improve his cultivation as soon as possible, until he was qualified to turn against the supreme magnate and unsheath his sword. Over the next few months, Jiang Tian continued on his journey, passing through many large galaxies that were like the Milky Way. He kept on getting closer to the central galaxy. He saw along the way. He passed by huge cultivation stars and saw countless ancestors in old linen clothes with animal skins around their waists, like the ancient Hua Xia, working hard on the earth, slashing and burning, planting spiritual fields for the cultivators above them. The seasons changed all year round, and the spiritual seeds that were planted with great difficulty were all cruelly taken away by the cultivators in charge before they could eat a bite. If there was resistance, they would often be beaten into ashes with a spell, just like slaves. He saw that in a poor mortal family, there was a person who was tested to have talent for cultivation and was immediately taken in as a disciple by a cultivator of a higher sect. The entire family celebrated, and a banquet was held for the surrounding villages. They happily moved out of the cold, poor, and dangerous small village that they originally lived in and moved into the city. They were no longer subject to the exorbitant taxes of the sect and the attacks of low-level demon beasts. He saw high-level nascent soul stage cultivators sitting on countless spiritual fields and mineral deposits. Their luxurious residences towered into the clouds, and countless beautiful maids in light gauze clothes shuttled back and forth in the palaces, living a life of debauchery and debauchery. Their magic power was still strong, but their divine souls had begun to fall and decay. Although they claimed to be immortals, were they immortals or devils? He saw that in the aristocratic families, for the sake of fighting for the power of the family, the sons of the first wife and the sons of concubines would cause trouble. They saw their brothers as enemies and killed each other until rivers of blood flowed. In the end, the son of a concubine who obtained the upper hand killed his brother and father. He held the head in one hand and the family seal in the other. He raised his head to the sky and laughed complacently. It was as if what he killed was not his own family but a group of pigs and dogs, a nest of beasts. But there were also tears of blood rolling down his face. Was he despicable, or did he have his own difficulties and was just trying to survive? What kind of story was behind all of this? He saw, most of the time, Jiang Tian's face was expressionless. He just looked on coldly. He saw a beautiful girl from a poor family being bullied by a low-level cultivator. She was terrified and desperate, and only wanted to die. If his daughter didn't have the heart to let him attack, Jiang Tian would also casually strike down a bolt of lightning and shatter him into pieces. Countless other cultivators were shocked. Then, under the lead of an old Xiantian cultivator, they hurriedly bowed to the sky, begging for mercy, Senior. If Jiang Bebe couldn't bear to see the demon beasts harassing and attacking the city, he would also strike with his palm. His palm could destroy all life and destroy 1,000,000 miles. The golden light shone brightly, as if Buddha had slapped the five-finger mountain. The demon beasts naturally retreated in fear. The people in the city immediately cheered. Only the cultivators were frightened and didn't know what had happened. He passed by two countries fighting. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers were surrounding and killing each other. The cultivators on both sides were also fighting with all kinds of Dharma treasures and immortal arts. The sky collapsed and the earth cracked. The water in the lake evaporated. Jiang Tian also stopped and watched with interest. It was as if he was watching an exciting movie. He saw how the commanders of the two sides racked their brains to think about each other's moves and then came up with countermeasures. The immortal cultivators were in a killing frenzy. Even the high-level immortal cultivators did not hesitate to rummage through the treasures that they had accumulated over hundreds of years and throw them all into the fray. The mortal kings on both sides sat in their royal palaces in a daze. They could only watch as their countries were smashed into pieces and their people were plunged into misery and suffering. However, they were unable to resist at all. In the end, Jiang Tian couldn't stand it anymore. He slapped the cultivators on both sides into ashes and instantly stopped the war. Just like that, he walked and watched along the way. When he saw injustice, he would also help. Most of the time, he just flew past. The scenes he saw were not only on the planets he passed by, but also on the edge of the entire universe. High-level cultivators were rich. They sat on the wealth and power accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years and had the power to kill. Civilians and low-level cultivators without cultivation could only fight with wild dogs for food and fierce demon beasts for a place to live. The civilizations of human beings were like a dark forest. Every civilization was the prey and the hunter, and it was their responsibility to destroy each other. Outside the central galaxy, the edge of the universe was the wilderness. Human beings fighting in the universe and killing each other crazily had experienced the era of great competition in the wilderness countless years ago. Jiang Tian had even seen it in many other worlds or the edge of the universe in his previous life. He was not surprised at all. On one hand, it was true that the universe was too vast. The edge of the universe and the slightly orderly central galaxy were like a chasm. The tentacles of the central galaxy couldn't reach anywhere. Without a powerful ruler, it was like a group of dragons without a leader. But on the other hand, these immortal cultivators themselves did not want to change. After all, they cultivated diligently, and no one really hoped that they could ascend to the immortal realm. Most of them just wanted to live longer and better lives, and this required a huge amount of cultivation resources. Those cultivators obviously thought that they could live better lives by oppressing the cultivators and mortals at the bottom. But Jiang Tian knew that the prosperity of a civilization required the rise of countless cultivators at the bottom. One day, the power at the bottom would gather into a tinder that would illuminate the dark forest of the universe. By then, swords and plows, iron and blood, and countless generations of people would have to sacrifice their lives and blood. However, only in blood and fire could a new civilization and order rise brilliantly. He was very glad that under his intentional or unintentional arrangements and guidance, Earth had been on the right path from the very beginning. Cultivators fought for mortals. The strong bathed in blood for the weak supported the strong, and the strong could also be born from the weak. A few months later, Jiang Tian arrived at the edge of the storm belt around the central galaxy. He put away the boat, held his daughter's hand and landed on a planet with life called the Zhoma planet. Looking inside the planet, one could see a black stream of water across the sky, enveloping the entire area, as if it could tear the space apart at any time. What was more terrifying was that the black curtain seemed to be made of space fragments and endless black holes, but it was still flowing slowly as if it were alive. Once inside, it could send a soul formation grand cultivator or even a planet to the depths of the unknown universe at any time. The storm belt was like a moat that surrounded and protected the eternal, dazzling central star river. Standing on the Zhoma planet and looking through the storm belt, Jiang Tian could already see a vast continent floating in the deep universe. The Saint Origin continent was in sight. Chapter 1823. The Tempest Belt was very chaotic. Space fragments were everywhere, and chaotic holes were everywhere. Space collapses and collapses happened from time to time. It was very dangerous. Even soul formation realm cultivators could be crushed into powder if they were not careful. Even their divine souls would be destroyed. Even the soul formation realm cultivators in the central galaxy would not cross it with their physical bodies. Many of them had died before. Fortunately, there were navigators in the star ocean who were proficient in the art of space. They opened up a passage with the experience they had accumulated over the years. This passage connected the Zhoma planet and the central galaxy. One could cross the Tempest Belt by using the Sky Stealer. Although the boat is a fairy artifact and can pass through the passage of the Tempest Belt instantly, the immortal monarch can sense my every move as long as I use this boat, even if he is in the Nine Heavens deity realm. So, I'm afraid I can't use it anymore. I have to find a team to pass through. Jiang Tian touched his chin and pondered. I want to get rid of the immortal monarch's control. Of course, I have to hide as much as possible. The next moment, he put the boat and the absolute heaven sword into the sky-devouring demonic gourd. Then, he used the art of deceiving the heavens and changed his appearance immediately. His figure had grown taller, and he was wearing an ordinary cyan robe. His appearance was even more ordinary, and he seemed to have a bit more vitality. His black hair had turned white, and there were a few more fine wrinkles at the corners of his eyes, making him look even more gloomy. In the end, even his aura was hidden, like a drop of water in the sea. It was difficult to distinguish and sense him. Then he helped Jiang Beibei to change her appearance slightly. She had not started to cultivate yet. The Nine Heavens deity realm recognized people by their aura, so it was easy for her to hide. After doing all this, Jiang Tian raised his head and looked at the sky. His deep gaze seemed to be able to penetrate through the boundless starry river, and he saw a simple and unadorned palace. After thinking about it carefully, there didn't seem to be any problems. He stepped on an ordinary flying sword and rushed towards Jiyuan City. Jiyuan City was one of the largest cities on the Juma planet. There were many courier stations. Also, there were a few enemies of Jiang Tian's from his previous life. Jiang Tian wanted to get rid of them. In the Nine Heavens deity realm, purple qi came from the east. Celestial springs were everywhere. Orchids and celestial flowers were swaying. In an ordinary palace, the 3 words, Undying Hall, were floating above it. The immortal emperor, dressed in an old Taoist robe, was sitting in front of the furnace with his eyes closed. He seemed to be taking a nap or meditating. Beside him, 2 green-robed Dao children were fanning themselves. Suddenly, the immortal emperor opened his eyes and looked at the mortal world. Venerable emperor, it seems that person's aura has disappeared from the Juma star. A boy said curiously. The immortal emperor's eyes shone with a strange light. He pondered and pinched his fingers for a moment. Suddenly, he smiled and said with contempt and arrogance, "It doesn't matter. Let him be." He closed his eyes again and pointed his finger. The pill furnace opened, and brilliant light rushed into the heavens. A silver river fell down, covering a blazing star. The star fell as if it wanted to escape. However, that star was a fireball shaped like the sun and not a planet or a continent. It was terrifyingly hot and was so big that it seemed like it could fill up a light year. The space around it was distorted and collapsed. There seemed to be golden crows flying about inside. The 2 boys were trembling under the horrible pressure, but the sun couldn't get rid of the light. It became smaller and smaller, closer and closer, and finally fell into the furnace. The immortal emperor pointed his finger again and the lid of the furnace closed. It was quiet inside. This furnace of pills has been refined for 2,207 years, but it hasn't formed a core embryo yet. The 2 boys took a light breath. As the only fairy connecting the central galaxy and the entire southern fringe galaxies, the Juma star was very prosperous, and Jiyuan City was one of the most prosperous cities on this planet. Palaces and palaces were all over the city. Many cultivators flew through the sky on their flying swords. The sky was filled with dazzling lights. There were also crystal spaceships with mottled traces taking off and landing. They were loaded with minerals, materials, and specialties from various galaxies. They wanted to make a fortune through the station. Countless disciples of aristocratic families, elites of sects, and rogue cultivators from the fringe galaxies gathered here, hoping to enter the central galaxy. There were many space pirate gangs, caravans, and businesses all over the planet. There were hundreds of thousands of space coachmen, boatmen, armed escorts, guards, thieves, and robbers who were engaged in legitimate businesses. Even the lowest labor had a cultivation level of the golden core stage. This was a place where good and bad people mixed together. Sun Yen was a person who made a living in the station. He was a peak stage nascent soul stage cultivator with a lifespan of more than 3,000 years. He used to be an ancestor-level figure on a planet in the fringe galaxies. However, because of his lust, he offended another half-divinity transformation stage cultivator, so he had to spend his whole life to make a living here. After working here for more than 200 years, he only controlled a few thousand cultivators, more than 100 flying horses, and several large carriages, which formed a Dragon Gate Caravan Company. In Jiyuan City, he was only a second or third-rate figure. Naturally, he couldn't be compared to the Tao ancestor he was on that planet, tyrannical and tyrannical. When the emperors of the human world saw him, they had to kowtow 3 times and 9 times. And yet, he was still very satisfied and even proud of himself. It was because he had reached the peak stage nascent soul stage from the first level of the nascent soul stage in just 200 years, which was more than 2,000 years of hard work on the home planet. As for the reason, it was because there were too many resources there. Heavenly materials and earthly treasures were everywhere, and there were endless business opportunities. As long as one was willing to work hard, the cultivation resources accumulated in a year would be 100 times more than on the home planet. Besides, There were also many cultivation arts. On his home planet, people would fight to the death for a soul formation cultivation art. Being able to get guidance from a soul formation grand cultivator was like having smoke coming out of their graves. However, soul formation cultivators weren't rare in this place at all. There would be some popping up in bars and businesses from time to time. As long as you were good at reading people's faces, flattering them, and being humble and courteous, when the other party was in a good mood, it was very likely that they would casually give you some advice. Often, the problems that you couldn't solve even after pondering for 100 years on the ancestral planet would be easily solved. His foundation wasn't good enough, so he couldn't live on any planet in the central galaxy for a long time. However, sometimes, because he was transporting cultivators and goods, he could stay in the central galaxy for half a month and absorb precious spirit chi, which greatly improved his power. Early in the morning, Sun Yen had eaten some spirit grain porridge and was humming an unknown song. He stepped on his flying sword and flew to the sky above his Dragon Gate car dealership. Immediately, his subordinates bowed to him respectfully. "Good morning, Lord Sun." "Good morning, Heavenly Lord." Sun Yen felt a bit smug after hearing those greetings. Being addressed as Master meant that he had some status. Planet Juma was a place where all kinds of people lived. It was much more difficult to become an ancestral patriarch there than on the home planet. So, he put on airs and snorted as a greeting. "Heavenly Lord? You're just an itinerant cultivator from the countryside. How dare you pretend to be a big shot on Planet Juma? Bah! You're just a bumpkin from a remote place. You kneel when you see a divine lord. How shameless can you be?" A mocking voice came. That person didn't try to hide it at all and was fearless. Hearing this voice, Sun Yen's mood instantly turned bad. His face sank and an urge to kill surged in his chest. Chapter 1824. Sun Yen didn't need to look to know that it came from his nemesis, Chen Xiong, who was also the owner of another large car dealership in Jiyuan City. Because they were competing for business, it was needless to say that they didn't get along well. Chen Xiong was now the outer elder of the Taihao sect in Saint Origin World and was a local. Chen Xiong's current cultivation was lower than Sun Yen's. He was merely a nascent soul cultivator. However, Chen Xiong had a backer, and his connections extended far and wide. Thus, Sun Yen didn't dare to offend Chen Xiong in the slightest even when Chen Xiong bullied him all day long. However, Sun Yen hated Chen Xiong to the core. If someone had told him that he could completely disappear from the world in exchange for all his wealth, Sun Yen might have hesitated for a moment, but if he had changed his mind and only asked for half of his wealth, he would have agreed without hesitation. Sun Yen didn't dare to refute Chen Xiong's mockery in front of everyone, and he felt extremely aggrieved. However, the arrival of a guest resolved his embarrassment in time. The guest's hair was white and his eyes were gloomy. He seemed to be only at the nascent soul realm and looked around as if it was his first time here. He didn't seem to be a big shot. Moreover, he was standing on his spiritual treasure flying sword and holding a little girl who had no cultivation at all. What was even stranger was that he had a big black dog with him. The dog's bloodline also seemed to be very ordinary. This was Jiang Tian's car dealership in disguise. "It's hard to do business. Why don't you have a fat sheep for me to slaughter?" Sun Yen knew that this wasn't a big deal, but to ease the awkwardness, he still flew over and greeted with a cheerful face. "Fellow cultivator, are you going to the central galaxy? Do you want to know more about the Dragon Gate car dealership?" "Yes, I'm going to Saint Origin World in the central galaxy." "What's the price?" Jiang Tian asked with a smile. Of course, he had an impression of Sun Yen. Although this person was very treacherous, he wasn't an evil person. 100 million low-grade crystals. Sun Yen observed Jiang Tian for a while and was sure that he was a cultivator from a peripheral planet. He must have come from an extraordinary background. When he first came here, he seemed to be an early-stage nascent soul realm cultivator. His bone structure and aptitude were nothing special. Such a cultivator would not be able to establish himself in the central galaxy. He must have come here to broaden his horizons so that he could go back to his home planet and show off. Therefore, Sun Yen did not care much about him. However, such cultivators were also the most vain. They liked to puff themselves up at their own cost. They were good spendthrifts. Generally, as long as they were complimented, these local rich people would not only happily pay the carriage fee, but also give a lot of tips. Therefore, it was a very profitable business for the car dealership. However, he was also afraid that this business would be snatched away. Therefore, in order to avoid being noticed, he used his divine sense to inform Jiang Tian and specifically instructed him, "Let's go to the carriage shop and talk. Everything can be discussed." 100 million low-grade crystals? Jiang Tian didn't frown at all and said, "If it's converted into top-grade crystals, it'll only cost 1,000 pieces, right?" Then he patted the sky-devouring demonic gourd, and a bulging bag half the height of a person appeared on the ground. Then he said indifferently, "Is it enough?" Sun Yen knew at first glance that the crystals were of extremely high quality. The spiritual qi inside was extremely condensed, and there were even laws lingering around them. He hurriedly said, "It's enough. It's enough." However, he looked at the opposite side worriedly and cautiously reminded him, "My friend, there are all kinds of people here. You must always remember that wealth can move people's hearts. Don't reveal it easily." As he spoke, he was so tired that his face turned red. He panted heavily and put Jiang Tian's crystals into his storage ring with difficulty. Then he handed Jiang Tian a talisman receipt and said, "We'll leave on time tomorrow morning." Jiang Tian took the receipt that was surrounded by magic power and was about to leave. Suddenly, a hearty laugh came from the opposite side. "My friend, is this your first time in Jiyuan City? How should I address you? Where are you from?" "I'm Chen Xiong, the owner of Zongtian car dealership." Amidst these words, a robust man with a full beard, a tall figure, luxurious clothes, and various protective and soul-nourishing magic artifacts that flickered with the light of treasures, stepped through the air and cupped his fists towards Jiang Tian. "My friend Qin, nice to meet you. I'm Siqing Cultivator, from the Black Sun Star Zone. My roots are just a small sect that is not worth mentioning. It's indeed my first time here. Please take care of me." Jiang Tian cupped his fists slightly, but a hint of coldness flashed in his eyes. Chen Xiong, an outer elder of the Haoyan sect, ran a car dealership business. In his previous life, Jiang Tian had suffered countless losses and humiliations because of him. In his previous life, after the immortal monarch brought Jiang Tian to the central galaxy, he directly taught him a set of basic cultivation methods and left him to fend for himself in the Saint Origin world. For hundreds of years, the immortal monarch didn't care about him at all. At that time, Jiang Tian was just a rogue cultivator. In his early years, he lived a precarious life in the Saint Origin world as a coolie, porter, farmer, and alchemy apprentice. At that time, Qin Xiong was an extraordinary person. He had returned to the headquarters of the Haotian sect in the Saint Origin world. He was famous and always took pleasure in humiliating Jiang Tian. After Jiang Tian reached the foundation establishment stage, he wanted to go back to Earth to visit his old friends. However, Chen Xiong seemed to have changed his attitude. He warmly helped Jiang Tian and called him brother. In fact, Jiang Tian later found out that it was all a conspiracy. With the Haotian sect's strength, it was impossible for them to reach Earth. Chen Xiong only wanted to relieve Jiang Tian's vigilance, but secretly contacted several Golden Core Hall Masters and Elders to kill Jiang Tian together with the intention of stealing the treasure. During the battle, Jiang Tian crazily swallowed pills to temporarily increase his cultivation and achieve the ultimate counterattack. However, he also suffered heavy injuries and had to cultivate for another 30 years to return to his peak state. At this time, Chen Xiong should be tempted by the treasure again. However, how could the current Jiang Tian be the inexperienced little lamb that could be slaughtered by others? So its fellow Taoist Siqing. Chen Xiong's face was full of enthusiasm. He smiled and said, "You're new here, so you don't have a place to stay. The old man is an outer elder of the Haotian sect in the Saint Origin world. Not only do we have a car dealership, but we also have a business and a hotel. Since you've found the Dragon Gate car dealership, I won't compete with Sun Yen for business." With that, he shot a warning glance at Sun Yen. Sun Yan's eyes drooped as a forced smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Chen Xiong seemed to be very satisfied with Sun Yan's submissive attitude. However, if you're looking for a trading company, I'm not trying to boast. The trading company of our Haotian sect has always been fair and honest. In particular, the tranquil soul-pacifying powder, made by the elder of the alchemy room, is a must-have for crossing the storm star belt. Otherwise, the spiritual interference alone is enough to make you suffer and destroy 1/10 of your cultivation. As for the hotels, the Haotian sect also has a few in Jiyuan City. They're all equipped with spirit-gathering arrays and guarded by several golden core and nascent soul cultivators. No one dares to disturb them. He winked his eyes coquettishly and said patiently, "There are even some beautiful stoves who are adept at dual cultivation. Many of them are from the declining nobles of the central galaxy. They are very beautiful and have excellent bone structures. Not only can I have a good time, but I can also improve my cultivation. Why not?" "Really? I'm tired from the journey. I really need to wash off the dust." Jiang Tian's eyes lit up. He pretended to be very interested and squeezed the hand of Jiang Beibei, who was glaring at him. During the journey, Jiang Tian and the big black dog had taught the little girl some common knowledge about cultivation. She had a rough idea about what a cultivation furnace was. "Fellow Taoist, if you're interested, I'll take you there now." Chen Xiong's eyes flashed with a trace of treachery. He chuckled, grabbed Jiang Tian's wrist, and flew into the sky. Chapter 1825. Siqing, remember to check carefully. Don't miss the time. Sun Yan also reminded him, but then he shook his head and heaved a sigh. Perhaps Jiang Tian's experience was too shallow, and he might not have checked the ticket carefully. Sigh. Let's not talk about the perilous central galaxy. Every year, countless heroes and talents in the peripheral galaxies perish at the entrance of the central galaxy and turn into dry bones. He heaved a sigh helplessly. I've earned 100 million low-grade crystals for nothing. I can sell that spot again. I'm so happy. However, the next second, his regret was replaced by joy. He went back to the garage, closed the door and set up a restriction array. Then he checked the crystals carefully. The scenery before Jiang Tian's eyes changed rapidly. Suddenly, black mist filled the air and filled the surrounding 10 miles of space, making it impossible for him to see the outside world. A moment ago, it was still bustling with noise and excitement, and in the next moment, it was as if he had arrived in another world. "A small grotto heaven," Jiang Tian said with a half-smile. "I'm Xie Yunting, an outer elder of the Haotian sect. Nice to meet you." A beautiful woman with a voluptuous figure dressed in palace attire walked out. She was tall and slender, and her waist was as slender as a snake. Her long and slender legs were faintly discernible under the gauze dress. She was a nascent soul realm cultivator, but she was at the peak of the 9th stage nascent soul realm. This guy doesn't seem to be as old as he looks. His skin is tender and smooth. He must be delicious. His body belongs to me. It's a good time to eat it. In addition, there was also a bald monk. He wore a blood-red monk robe, but he had a pair of demonic vertical pupils. His gaze was cruel and greedy as he looked at Jiang Tian. It was as if Jiang Tian was a piece of fat meat. He would occasionally stick out his tongue and make a 1111 suasu sound. The blood monk, Tuju, was an outer elder of the Haotian sect. He was also a peak-stage nascent soul cultivator. In addition, there were more than 10 early-stage nascent soul cultivators, all of whom were looking at Jiang Tian with malicious smiles. Almost all the people who had tried to kill Jiang Tian in his previous life were there. However, they had arrived 100 years earlier. Is fellow cultivator Xie a dual cultivation vessel? Why did he find someone else? I'm too embarrassed to do that in public, Jiang Tian said with a smile that was not a smile. Xie Tingran immediately revealed a mocking smile and looked at Jiang Tian as if she was looking at an idiot. Taoist Siqing, she's not dual cultivating with you. She wants to kill you. Chen Xiong laughed sinisterly and said calmly, Who told you to bring so many crystals? If you want to blame someone, blame your shallow experience in the martial world for not knowing the dangers of the world. It was obvious that this wasn't the first time he had done such a thing. He didn't feel the slightest bit of guilt or psychological burden. Instead, he was immensely proud of himself. I can't believe that a bumpkin from a remote place like the Black Sun Domain has so many crystals. It's not something an ant like you can enjoy. Take the initiative to erase the divine sense imprint on the gourd so that we can take it. When we kill you later, we'll give you a quick death. Xie Yunting looked down at Jiang Tian and said coldly, as if killing Jiang Tian without torturing him was already an extrajudicial mercy. Ha! The Haoyan sect is still so overbearing. A mocking smile appeared on Jiang Tian's face. If it were in his previous life, Jiang Tian would only be a foundation establishment cultivator 100 years later, a lowly itinerant cultivator. When he encountered a sect like the Haoyan sect, he would tremble in fear and avoid them. However, in this life, Jiang Tian could destroy the Haoyan sect by lifting his hand if he wanted to. Even though the Haoyan sect was located in the central galaxy, it was only a third-rate sect in the divine origin world after all. It only had one soul formation divine lord, and he was just an ordinary soul formation cultivator. It was like there were weak students in the big cities who were even weaker than the divine soul formation cultivators in the savage lands. What? You don't want to admit defeat? Then I'll send you to hell. Blood Monk Tuju gave a loud shout and his nascent soul suddenly rumbled. His spirit embryo trembled and demonic aura gushed out. A strange snake apparition rose behind his back and opened its bloody mouth. Its fangs were exposed and surrounded by a sea of blood. Corpses and bones floated up and down. It looked like it was filled with baleful aura and was threatening Jiang Tian. Big Black, eat them. Jiang Tian suddenly ordered coldly. I've been eating spirit pills every day. My taste buds are getting bland. Finally, I can taste something new. Big Black's eyes were filled with excitement. Saliva flowed out of his mouth and a human-like smile appeared on his face. He growled, which was actually a dragon's roar. Suddenly, he jumped out and rushed into the crowd. He shook his body and turned into a dog with a dragon's head. The dragon's head expanded out of proportion and was like a small mountain. He bit toward Blood Monk Tuju. What? He has the bloodline of the dragon race. Tuju was astonished. The strange snake Dharma idol swelled and rushed toward the large black dog. However, it was completely useless. It was directly snapped in half by the large black dog's bite. Immediately afterward, the massive dragon's mouth covered the sky and swallowed Tuju whole. Even his nascent soul, physical body, and divine sense were all chewed into pieces. At this moment, more than a dozen flying swords and a giant axe whistled and slashed toward Big Black's back. Big Black didn't even turn his head. With a swing of his tail, the flying swords and giant axe were all turned into dust. Several cultivators were all swept away and crashed into the mountain wall. Their skin and flesh were lacerated and they died. Although Xie Yunting and Chen Xiong didn't die on the spot, they were also very miserable. They were knocked a few miles away and showed fear. For a moment, they hesitated and were in a dilemma. Xie Yunting's spirit embryo was shaking from the impact. Cracks appeared on her nascent soul, and blood flowed out of the web between her thumb and forefinger. She quickly fled out of the small grotto heaven and said in horror, "Chen Xiong, what's going on? Didn't you say that they came from the Black Sun Star region? This grotto heaven is completely under our control. Why is the law that I struck out broken by this evil dog?" That Big Black suddenly rushed over and slapped down with his claws. A dragon claw with a radius of 1 mile appeared. Its scales were heavy, and its bone hook was sharp. It shone with golden light and was surrounded by purple gas. It was as heavy as a mountain. Xie Yunting's beautiful eyes were wide open. She didn't even have time to beg for mercy before she was smashed into a meat patty. Until the moment of her death, her charming face was still full of shock and fear, as if she couldn't believe that she was killed by a small itinerant cultivator from a remote place. The large black dog opened its mouth and sucked, swallowing her flesh and spiritual power into its stomach. "Senior, please spare my life. I didn't recognize the real dragon. I shouldn't have plotted against you. At this time, Qin Xiong was so scared that he fell to his knees and trembled. He didn't dare to resist at all. Jiang Tian's inconspicuous big black dog was comparable to the strength of an ordinary soul formation cultivator. As for Jiang Tian, he was probably even stronger. Even in the Saint Origin continent, he was a giant at the level of a sect master or family leader. He was just an ordinary nascent soul cultivator. How could he be a match for Jiang Tian? A lifetime of hunting geese, only to be pecked by the geese. This time, I really kicked a steel plate. Qin Xiong wailed in his heart. He had never thought that Jiang Tian, a cultivator from a remote star region, would be so powerful. If he was given another chance, he swore that he would never provoke Jiang Tian. He would stay as far away from him as possible. Senior, this junior is willing to contribute all of my family's wealth to young master. I am willing to be young master's cow and horse. I have quite a lot of connections in Saint Origin World and Juma Star. I know everything big and small. I am willing to serve young master. Qin Xiong roared with tears and snot running down his face. You don't know as much as I do. Jiang Tian's face was full of sarcasm. He slapped down without hesitation. Chapter 1826. Boom. Qin Xiong turned into dust and even his divine soul was destroyed. Jiang Beibei watched from the side. Her beautiful eyes didn't show much emotion, showing a calmness that didn't match her age. She seemed to be used to killing and already knew the cruelty of the cultivation world. Alas, those guys from the Haotian sect set up the small grotto heaven array. Normal cultivators, even soul formation cultivators, wouldn't be able to find it if they didn't search carefully. However, you've done too much and I found some clues. In a remote forest outside the city, Sun Nian hid his energy and covered his face with a Dharma artifact. He blended in with the surrounding vegetation and rocks. He secretly looked at a point in the void with burning anticipation in his eyes. He came here to scavenge. Normally, after the Haotian sect finished their business, they would disperse the small grotto heaven array and leave behind some Dharma artifact fragments. Although they were not worth mentioning for the giants, they were still a small fortune for a nascent soul cultivator like him. It was not easy for cultivators from the peripheral galaxies to establish a foothold here. Sun Nian had been thrifty and diligent, expanding his sources of income and reducing his expenditure. That was how he had accumulated his current wealth. After a while, the void trembled and the light changed. So fast this time? It only took less than half an hour. Sun Nian's eyes lit up. Then he frowned and shook his head. Alas, that fellow cultivator Siqing is still too weak. They got it so fast. Idiot, I reminded him again and again to check the tickets, but he didn't. However, he was shocked to see that the one who stepped out of the void was not Qin Xiong and the others from the Haotian sect, but a middle-aged cultivator from a remote galaxy. Blood was flowing under his feet and there were corpses everywhere. Qin Xiong, Xie Yunting and the blood monk were nowhere to be seen. In an instant, Sun Nian was so shocked that his eyes almost popped out. How could he be so powerful that he killed Qin Xiong and the others? Jiang Tian seemed to have sensed Sun Nian's gaze. He looked up and smiled at Sun Nian. Sun Nian immediately looked away as if he had seen a poisonous snake. He wasn't happy about the death of Qin Xiong at all. Instead, he felt sad about the death of his enemy. He was now fully aware that this young man wasn't some fat sheep. He was clearly the king of hell. As for Qin Xiong and the other brats, they had actually thrown themselves into the palms of these kings of hell. They were really seeking their own deaths. Actually, when he saw Jiang Tian, how could he not have the intention to kill and seize the treasure? But he knew that Qin Xiong would surely intercept him, so he simply didn't make a move. Jiang Tian didn't inform Sun Nian. Instead, he directly returned to Jiyuan City and found an inn to settle down. He believed that Sun Nian wouldn't speak carelessly. Carelessly speaking would cause more trouble, which might lead to the Haotian sect's interrogation and revenge. Furthermore, Jiang Tian had removed the outer house elder that the Haotian sect had placed on Juma planet, which would greatly affect the business of his caravans, businesses, and hotels. This coincidentally gave Sun Nian the opportunity to expand his territory. The night passed uneventfully. The next day, Jiang Tian arrived at the Dragon Gate carriage depot at the appointed time. He immediately saw many cultivators waiting to depart. The first group of people were dressed luxuriously. Most of them were disciples of aristocratic families and sect elites from various star areas. They were surrounded by people around them. The star area they were in wasn't far from the central galaxy. There were only 3 to 5 star areas that were separated by the Milky Way. According to their conversation, many of them had soul formation cultivators as their backers. Some even had connections with some forces in the central galaxy. Their families or sects would provide them with a large amount of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Some even sent soul formation cultivators as guards to escort them to enter the central galaxy. For example, Yang Wu was the most conspicuous one. He came from a large cultivation planet in the extragalactic star area that bordered the central galaxy. His sister was married to the Hall Master of a second-rate sect in the Divine Origin continent. Even though his foundation was ordinary and he was only in the Golden Core realm after cultivating for 100 years, he was still recruited by that sect. The second group of people were the cultivators around Yang Wu. These cultivators came from all kinds of backgrounds. Most of them came from the central galaxy. Although they were located at the edge, they were definitely not as desolate as the Milky Way. Some of them were elites of their sects and had powerful backers. Some had extraordinary backgrounds. The third group of people were like Jiang Tian. They came from the real star areas that were considered barren. Most of their faces were covered in dust, and their appearances were old. There were even injuries on their bodies, and their auras were dried up. After all, they were too far away from the central galaxy. Even though they were nascent soul cultivators, they were still very weak after arriving there. They were timid and didn't dare to talk. They looked at Yang Wu and the others vigilantly. They talked and laughed, not wanting to miss any information. They were in sharp contrast to the arrogant Yang Wu and the others. But as time went by, this group of cultivators also started to talk slowly. They found cultivators from the same or neighboring star areas and talked about their backgrounds, hoping to make some friends. After all, the central galaxy was too dangerous. They didn't know anyone there and they didn't have any background. Everyone wanted to have more friends. At the same time, Jiang Tian was suddenly attracted by 3 men and a woman. The man in the lead was wearing a simple and natural robe. His beard was as dense as steel needles and he looked serious. He walked in the front with his hands behind his back and a long sword on his back. Anyone who knew what was going on would be able to tell that the scabbard was made of the thinnest skin on the back of the silver-bearded golden-eyed flood dragon. Although this kind of dragon was only a nascent soul beast, it was extremely rare and lived in the forbidden area of the universe. Only peak-stage nascent soul cultivators would dare to enter. As for the man and the woman, the man was wearing a white robe. He was tall and straight, like an unsheathed sword. He was already a peak-stage nascent soul cultivator and a sacred-grade nascent soul cultivator. The woman was wearing a red dress. Her waist was as thin as a snake and her long legs were wrapped in a short skirt. Her body was burning like a ball of fire. But her face was delicate and her black hair was like ink. She lowered her head slightly and blinked her big eyes, like a girl next door. The people around Jiang Tian couldn't help but hold their breaths. Even Yang Wu couldn't help but turn around to take a few glances. When Jiang Tian saw the two of them, there was a hint of coldness and mockery in his eyes. It's Yen Beifei and Zhao Feifei. This middle-aged man is Yen Beitong's father, Yen Nanxian. According to the time, Yen Beifei should be an elite disciple of the Tian Luo sect and Yen Nanxian should be the sect leader of the Tian Luo sect. They should be traveling in the central galaxy or completing a sect mission. 200 years later, Yen Nanxian will be the sect leader and Yen Beifei will be the Zongzi. They were old friends, and they had a grudge against each other. He just didn't expect to meet them so soon. Chapter 1827. In his previous life, The immortal monarch had left Jiang Tian in the Saint Origin continent and taught him a set of basic cultivation techniques. Then he went straight into the depths of the central galaxy. Perhaps he had gone to the Nine Heavens immortal realm and disappeared. Jiang Tian lived alone in the Saint Origin world for a long time. In the Saint Origin world, Jiang Tian's luck was excellent. He was like the chosen one, always able to obtain some fortuitous encounters and treasures. At that time, Jiang Tian still didn't understand what was going on. Now, he naturally knew that it was the immortal monarch and the other big shots behind the scenes who had left Zhao Xueqing to become an immortal. And before Zhao Xueqing committed suicide, she had transferred the immortal monarch's luck to Jiang Tian. Anyway, although Jiang Tian was an itinerant cultivator, he advanced very quickly. 100 years later, he successfully reached the nascent soul stage and became one of the few heavenly lords among itinerant cultivators. During those 100 years, Jiang Tian struggled in the cold and cruel world of cultivation. He felt endless coldness and bone-piercing coldness. Once he became a nascent soul heavenly lord, everything changed. He was chosen by the Tian Luo sect and became an elite disciple. The person who welcomed Jiang Tian into the sect was Yan Nanxian, who was already an elder of the Tian Luo sect. The Tian Luo sect was one of the top 10 divine sects in the Saint Origin world. It had a long history of hundreds of thousands of years. No matter if it was cultivation techniques or cultivation resources, they were all innumerable. The fact that Jiang Tian could become an elite disciple was no different from a carp leaping through the dragon gate. More importantly, there were dozens of elders in the Tian Luo sect who were at the soul formation realm and an ancestral patriarch who was at the void return realm. The sect was full of powerful cultivators and disciples. Jiang Tian, who was alone, had found a powerful backer. Of course, he was very grateful to Yan Nanxian. Zhao Feifei was also an elite disciple and she seemed to have a good impression of Jiang Tian. However, Jiang Tian only wanted to improve his cultivation at that time. Naturally, he didn't care about her and politely rejected her. Yan Nanxian's son, Yan Beifei, was already a hall master of the Tian Luo sect and was half a step away from the soul formation realm. Moreover, he was deeply in love with his childhood sweetheart, Zhao Feifei. Naturally, he hated Jiang Tian to the bone and repeatedly bullied and targeted him. At that time, Jiang Tian's cultivation was inferior to his. Furthermore, he was grateful to Yan Beifei for recognizing his worth. He could only endure it. After Yan Nanxian found out about the conflict between the two, he tried to uphold justice by severely punishing his son, Yan Beifei. He also took extra care of Jiang Tian and gave him many cultivation resources and techniques. He even wanted to preside over the marriage between Jiang Tian and Zhao Feifei. Although Jiang Tian had rejected the marriage, it still made Jiang Tian very grateful. He saw Yan Nanxian as his second parent and trusted him very much. But 5 years later, Jiang Tian found out that it was all a conspiracy. At that time, Jiang Tian was very cautious and had no confidence in human nature. It turned out that when he was in seclusion to break through, he was always looking for some desolate and unknown forbidden places. But when he was about to break through, he did not reject the protection of Yan Nanxian and the other two. But when he was at the most critical moment of his breakthrough, Yan Nanxian and the other two brazenly attacked. They wanted to destroy his soul and seize the opportunity to possess him. It turned out that Yan Nanxian's physical body was once injured and his lifespan was almost exhausted. He only treated Jiang Tian as a room. Previously, he had given many benefits just to push Jiang Tian's cultivation up as soon as possible so that he could possess him as soon as possible. His grace to Jiang Tian was just to dispel his wariness. Because of Jiang Tian's luck and his reckless fighting, he was able to luckily escape. However, it was still a narrow escape, and he walked on the edge of life and death. Although Jiang Tian escaped, Yan Nanxian was still very angry. He killed Jiang Tian's family and friends. At that time, Jiang Tian had a best friend in Yellow Maple City called Lin Yang. Lin Yang was the son of the city lord. The Lin family was also an aristocratic family that had produced a soul formation expert. Lin Yang's status could be said to be noble and high. But he did not look down on Jiang Tian at all just because Jiang Tian was a cultivator from a peripheral star region. When Jiang Tian was still a small Foundation establishment cultivator, he took in the injured Jiang Tian. The two of them exchanged cultivation experiences together, or went outside the city to hunt demon beasts to obtain cultivation resources. He even joked that he wanted to marry his sister to Jiang Tian and become Jiang Tian's brother-in-law. But because Yan Nanxian wanted to vent his anger, he led the army of the sect and directly destroyed Yellow Maple City. Hundreds of people in the Lin family were brazenly exterminated just because Lin Yang was Jiang Tian's friend. Even the thousands of commoners in Yellow Maple City had been slaughtered. During the war, the severely injured Lin Takong was extremely sad and angry. He questioned Yan Nanxian about the Lin family's crime. Why did the Tian Luo sect destroy the city? Yan Nanxian only had one sentence: "You took in Kong Te Chu." Then he slapped Lin Takong to death. After Jiang Tian received the news that the Lin family had been exterminated, he did not dare to take revenge at all. He lived in fear for several years until he found an opportunity to escape to the continent of the Nine Clouds. Only then did he feel relieved. That period of time was a nightmare for Jiang Tian. He was tortured by self-doubt and guilt. He woke up from nightmares countless times. His eyes were wide open and he could not sleep or meditate. When he closed his eyes, it was as if he could see the Lin family's ancestor, Lin Yang, and the others questioning Jiang Tian why he did not avenge them. 100 years later, the immortal emperor remembered Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian entered the Hengyu celestial sect. After reaching the soul formation stage, he destroyed the Tian Luo sect and killed Yan Nanxian and the others. But now, Yan Nanxian was only a half-step soul formation stage cultivator. Jiang Tian could kill him with a finger. However, Jiang Tian still did not take action. He went to the continent of Saint Origin to wait for the birth of a celestial material that could help him reach the soul formation stage. Yan Nanxian was different from Chen Xiong. The sect leader of the Tian Luo sect was much more powerful than Chen Xiong's Grand Sky sect. His status was also much higher. Once he was killed, the Tian Luo sect would do everything they could to track down Jiang Tian. Even the Saint Realm Great Ancestor would take action. Before that, Jiang Tian did not want to alert the enemy and complicate matters. After he got the celestial material, destroying the Tian Luo sect was just a matter of minutes. Senior Yan. Leader Yan. Seeing Yan Nanxian and the other two enter, the crowd was in an uproar. Many people, including Yang Wu and the others, saluted and flattered. Jiang Tian also saluted. Meanwhile, Sun Yan also ran out and nodded at Jiang Tian with an indiscernible degree. Then he bowed deeply to Yan Nanxian and said, "Sun Yan greets Yan Nanxian." Yan Nanxian smiled faintly, making people feel as if they were bathed in the spring breeze. He did not have any arrogance as he smiled and said, "Boss Sun, is everyone here? Can we leave now?" Of course, when Leader Yan arrives, it will be the auspicious time to leave. With Senior Yan Nanxian holding the fort, this journey will definitely be smooth sailing. Sun Yan had a fawning expression on his face. His words were so sweet that they seemed to be smeared with honey. "Ha, oh Boss Sun, you have such a sweet mouth. No wonder you are so popular in Jiyuan City." Yan Nanxian smiled and patted Sun Yan's shoulder. "I can only make a living because of the kindness of all the seniors who took care of me." Sun Yan smiled and whistled. Suddenly, a carriage that was about 100 meters long came across the sky like a long snake. There were countless talisman inscriptions on the carriage. They emitted a bright light and dermic powers flowed. Pegasi with 10-meter-long wings and white manes fluttered in the air. They looked up to the sky and neighed. They looked incomparably majestic and were pulling the carriage with the reins of the laws. This kind of Pegasi was extremely rare. They naturally controlled the laws of space and had the bloodline of a divine beast. One of them was priceless. At this moment, cultivators on swords flew over and surrounded the entire carriage. Their robes were embroidered with the words, "Grand Sky Sect." Suddenly, the surrounding people exclaimed with fear in their eyes. The leader of the half-step soul formation cultivators looked down and shouted, Who is the itinerant cultivator, Siqing? Stand out. Sun Yan's heart skipped a beat. Was the matter exposed? Chapter 1828. Sun Yan lowered his head and didn't dare to say a word. Not only him, but the other cultivators on the bus were also panicking. This half-step divine transformation realm cultivator was no small matter. He was the vice sect master of the heavenly sect, Lei Qianjun. In the Saint Origin world, he was also an overlord. His status was high and lofty, and he looked down on the common people. The other cultivators on the sword were all nascent soul cultivators, elders or hall leaders. Normal cultivators wouldn't dare to offend them. Jiang Tian took a step forward and said with a faint smile, I am. Yesterday, our outer sect elder Chen Xiong took you to our hotel, but he suddenly disappeared and his soul tablet was destroyed. Where did he go? Please enlighten me. Lei Qianjun stared at Jiang Tian with murderous intent. Clang, clang. The other cultivators of the Haotian sect were also filled with murderous intent. They all took out their Dharma treasures. Suddenly, the Dharma treasures flashed and a vast amount of Dharma powers came crashing down. Many cultivators retreated in fear. What? Elder Chen Xiong is dead? Everyone exclaimed. Sun Yan wiped his tears in an even more exaggerated manner and said, Fellow Taoist Chen Xiong has always been kind and benevolent. Which villainous person dares to attack him? Senior. Jiang Tian said calmly. Elder Chen Xiong did want to take me to the hotel, but he suddenly used an escape art to leave the city. I don't know what happened. But outside the city, I met Li Ludao, who claimed to be the son of the city lord. Senior Chen Xiong said that he had something to discuss with him, so he asked me to find a hotel and leave with Li Ludao. I'm not familiar with this place and I don't know where the hotel is, so I had to find a hotel to stay in. Blue Wave City and Yellow Maple City are neighbors. Between the two is a Xianji forest, which is rich in natural resources. Spirit grasses and orchids are everywhere. The Lin family and Li Liudao's family often fight for this territory because Jiang Tian used to be the Lin family's guard. In his previous life, Li Ludao also often bullied Jiang Tian. Li Ludao was naturally the best scapegoat. According to the time, Li Ludao should have just reached the Golden Core realm. I'm sorry, but you can't take the blame. You can only be killed by Lei Qianjun. Lei Qianjun remained silent as he carefully scrutinized Jiang Tian for a long time. Suddenly, he said coldly, Give me your storage magic artifact and let me inspect it. In addition, open your divine soul for me to search. At this moment, Yan Nanxian suddenly sneered and said, Lei Qianjun, don't be noisy here. Can't you see that the bus is about to depart? Hallmaster Yan, I'm really sorry for disturbing you. Lei Qianjun bowed deeply with a humble expression. But yesterday, Chen Xiong was not the only one. Even the Blood Monk and Xie Yunting, two elites of the sect, died together. Moreover, their souls were extinguished in less than a breath. To our humble sect, this is a huge loss and a great humiliation. Fellow Taoist Siqing was one of the last people Chen Xiong saw. She was naturally extremely suspicious. How could this junior not investigate clearly? It can't be. This guy is so powerful and ruthless? Hearing this, everyone looked at Jiang Tian in disbelief. Then, they quickly retreated dozens of meters away, drawing a clear line between them and Jiang Tian, afraid that they would be implicated. Even though Zhao Feifei didn't step back, she also looked at Jiang Tian with her eyes wide open. Chen Xiong, Blood Monk Tuju, and Xie Yunting were all nascent soul heavenly lords who had been through hundreds of battles. Their nascent souls were all at the peak of their nascent souls. How could this brat be so capable that he could kill them instantly? Yan Nanxian looked surprised. He examined Jiang Tian for a while and suddenly smiled. Siqing should be a nascent soul cultivator. If he can kill 3 high-grade nascent soul cultivators, he can only be a sacred-grade nascent soul cultivator. But look at his energy. How can he be a sacred-grade nascent soul cultivator? Reporting to Senior Lei, this junior would be so bold as to say something fair. This is the first time Siqing came to planet Juma from the Black Sun Galaxy. She doesn't know anything about this place. How could she know about the azure wave city of the divine origin world and Li Ludao? Sun Yen also smiled and bowed. Lei Qianjun exchanged a few glances with the few elders and hall masters around him, communicating with each other through their divine senses. Suddenly, he bowed deeply and said, "Hall Master Yen, I apologize for my rudeness. We will leave now. Have a safe trip, senior. Sorry for bothering you today. We'll visit you another day to apologize." Yen Nanxian waved his hand, indicating that it was okay. Then, Lei Qianjun left with many cultivators. Fierce discussions came from afar. So Li Ludao is the most suspicious. No. Li Ludao can't do that, but the ancestral patriarch of the Li family is a half-step soul formation cultivator. Only he could kill so many cultivators in an instant. Damn it. How dare they bully the heavenly sect? Kill them all. Sun Yen calmed down and said with a smile, "It's just a false alarm. Let's get on the train." "Xiqing, you're from the Black Sun Galaxy too?" "So am I. I'm Guochuan Dong." In the process of going through the security check, a fatty beside Jiang Tian suddenly pulled on his sleeve and said in a low voice, "Nice to meet you, Cultivator Gua. I didn't expect to meet you here." Jiang Tian grabbed the fatty's meaty hand and had a teary expression on his face, as if he was a fellow townsman. "Xiqing, do you have any other titles? How come I've never seen or heard of you?" Guochuan Dong scratched his head and said with a confused smile. The Black Sun Galaxy was also a desolate place. There were only a few nascent soul cultivators in the past few hundred years. Guochuan Dong knew almost all of them. As soon as Guochuan Dong said that, Jiang Tian immediately felt a faint immortal will covering him. Could it be that Yen Nanxian is already preparing to search for a residence? Jiang Tian didn't take it to heart at all. Although he didn't want to alert the enemy, if Yen Nanxian made a move now, he naturally wouldn't mind killing him with a slap. Thus, he smiled faintly and said, "The martial world is dangerous. Who doesn't change their identities frequently? How can they show others so easily?" "Identity? What's that?" Guochuan Dong was puzzled. They went through the security check together. There were at least 2 half-heavenly lords at the inspection station in front of the carriage. There was also a mirror hanging in the air. As long as someone stood under it, the mirror would immediately reflect the person's true appearance, cultivation, race, bloodline, and other information. There was a guard at every step. Normally, nascent soul cultivators would show their true appearance at the first checkpoint. And it was said that the checkpoints in the divine origin world were even stricter. Jiang Tian was the opposite. He had become a nascent soul cultivator in the divine realm, and his energy was restrained to the extreme. He looked like an ordinary person, so he had to release his energy. The mirror almost didn't reflect Jiang Tian's golden core level. It could only tell that he was a human, but it didn't know anything else. Yen Nanxian, who had already boarded the carriage, turned around in confusion, wondering if the mirror was broken. In the end, about 100 people entered the carriage together. Chapter 1829. The carriage was long and narrow, about 100 meters long and 20 meters wide. For example, Jiang Tian and Guochuan Dong had only spent 100 million crystal stones to buy a middle-class seat. Each of them had a small room that could only fit 3 or 4 people. The lower-class seats were even more cramped. There were no private rooms, so they could only sit cross-legged there. Other than that, there were also a few first-class seats with spirit-gathering arrays and soundproof seals. Yen Nanxian and the other 2 were sitting in such seats. Guochuan Dong's room was very close to Jiang Tian's room. Since Guochuan Dong was very familiar with Jiang Tian, he didn't want to leave after entering Jiang Tian's room. With a face full of expectation, Guochuan Dong said, "We will arrive in Saint Origin World in 10 days. I heard that the spirit chi there is 100 times more abundant than in our ancestral planet. I think we can reach the soul formation realm from the nascent soul realm in 200 years. Jiang Tian shook his head and smiled bitterly. "You are too naive. My aptitude is average, but 500 years should be enough, right?" Guochuandong was so excited that the fat on his body shook. Do you know that the spirit qi in the central galaxy is very uneven? Jiang Tian wasn't in a hurry. He said with a faint smile. Uneven? What do you mean? Guochuandong pinched Jiang Beibei's soft cheeks, which made Jiang Beibei roll her eyes. She smiled and said, Sister Siqing, is this your daughter? She is so cute. Your partner must be very beautiful. Why don't I see her? We are separated for a while, but we will meet again someday. Jiang Tian didn't linger on this topic. He smiled and explained, first of all, in the Saint Origin world, the top 10 great sects led by the Luoying sect and the Tian Luo sect are aloof from worldly affairs. They occupy famous mountains, great rivers, and blessed lands. They occupy large spiritual veins. They occupy 50% of the world's spiritual energy. Secondly, there are cultivation cities controlled by the cultivation royal families and the noble families. These cultivation cities are often built with large spirit gathering arrays as the foundation. They absorb all the spirit qi in a few thousand miles, or even tens of thousands of miles, like rivers flowing into the sea. This is where the spirit qi is abundant. In this city, there are also aristocratic families' mansions, cultivation rooms, and so on. The spiritual qi is even denser. In this way, apart from the sects and aristocratic families, even if the spiritual qi in other places is naturally abundant, it will become extremely thin due to this siphoning effect. It's not an exaggeration to say that the spiritual qi in the ordinary realms of the Saint Origin world might not even be as good as in our hometown. When Guochuandong heard this, he immediately became muddle-headed. He had heard from his ancestors and read from ancient books that Saint Origin world or Central Galaxy was the holy land of cultivation in the entire universe. Once one entered it, a breakthrough would be as easy as water flowing through a canal. He didn't expect it to be so complicated. Then what should we do? Guochuandong frowned and said, I heard that those sects are very strict when it comes to selecting disciples. Nascent soul cultivators from remote star areas are nothing to them. Right, there are also the cities built by the imperial family and the aristocratic family. Can't we just enter the city directly? How can it be that easy? Jiang Tian smiled leisurely. As far as I know, all cultivation cities are strictly managed by cultivators. Either you spend a lot of money to buy a cultivation building or a palace to get a residence permit, or you rent a place with crystals and have the support of those companies and families to get a temporary residence permit. Otherwise, you won't be allowed to enter. It's very dangerous to live in a mortal city or wander in the wild. First of all, there are monsters everywhere. The chances of nascent soul cultivators dying are very high. Second, as far as I know, the boundary between the Central Galaxy and the Fiend Realm has been unstable in the past 100 years. Occasionally, there will be demonic waves, which are even more terrifying. Damn, is it that difficult? That's not what my ancestral patriarch said. Guochuandong screamed and couldn't wait to turn around and run away. However, he found that the sky steed's wings covered the sky and went straight into the deep space. The planet on the sky steed was rapidly shrinking. They had already entered the passage of the storm belt. I want to go back to the ancestral planet. Isn't it good to be called the ancestral patriarch and be worshipped by thousands of people there? Why do I have to go to the Saint Origin world to suffer? Guochuandong beat his chest and stamped his feet. It was impossible for him to go back now. Sun Yan would never go through all the trouble for him. I've worked so hard to reach the nascent soul level and I can finally dominate the ancestral planet. However, my ancestral patriarch told me that there are soul formation grand cultivators, void returning saints and Tao reunion perfected immortals up there. It's not easy to cultivate. After a few hundred years of hard work, I thought I could finally enjoy life in the divine origin world. I didn't expect it to be so difficult. Guochuandong sat on a chair with a dull look in his eyes. He was very depressed and kept sighing. Looking at the dejected Guochuandong, Jiang Tian somehow found it funny. It was like studying hard in high school. The teachers always told you that as long as you got into college, your life would be smooth and everything would go smoothly. It was like the college entrance examination would solve all the problems in life. However, after entering college and society, you would realize that the college entrance examination was child's play compared to the beatings of society. Competition in the workplace, starting a business, buying a house, getting married, having a relationship, having a child, having parents growing old, having a midlife crisis. All the way to difficult mode, he had to continuously kill monsters and level up, and the college entrance exam was just a small hurdle, an insignificant monster. Life is always a struggle in the sea of bitterness. Since you've come to a wider world, there's no turning back. You should fight for a future and fight for your life. There's no reason to be afraid and retreat. There are risks and opportunities here, but there are more opportunities after all. My friend Gua, you should face them positively. Jiang Tian smiled encouragingly, as if encouraging himself as well. Coward! The large black dog sneered, forgetting how cowardly it usually was. Exactly. Jiang Beibei also rolled her eyes at him with disdain. You're right. Guochuandong slapped his thigh and his dim eyes lit up. There seemed to be a fire of fighting spirit in them. Actually, my aptitude is ordinary, and I don't have any background. I'm just a mortal. Back then, the ancestral patriarchs, the leaders, and even my parents didn't think much of me. They didn't give me many cultivation resources, and the cultivation arts I practiced were mediocre. But with my diligence and courage, I ventured deep into the forbidden lands and risked my life again and again. Finally, I obtained some training resources, and my cultivation soared day by day. Eventually, I became the only person on the homeworld who entered the nascent soul stage within 1,000 years. No matter how difficult it is in the divine origin world, it's still much better than my ancestral planet where spirit chi is scarce. If you show the courage and perseverance that you used to have, you'll eventually be able to carve out a bloody path. It's good that you've thought it through. Jiang Tian revealed a gratified expression and nodded. Guochuandong patted his storage ring and took out a plate of chicken drumsticks. He smiled and said, Golden Core Stage Demonic Beast, cooked by the 5 Colors Peacock. Come, let's eat together. As he said that, he passed one to Jiang Beibei. Jiang Beibei beamed with joy. The large black dog was also drooling, and he happily started to eat. At this moment, a series of knocks came from the door. Jiang Tianxin waved his hand, and the door opened. Yang Wu walked in slowly, surrounded by a few cultivators in luxurious clothes. With his hands behind his back, he said arrogantly, I'll give you 100 million crystal stones, and you'll give up the private room. Also, don't eat. The stench is so overwhelming that even my Dao companion is disgusted. They bought the tickets late. There were no more mid-class seats, so they had to buy the low-class seats. However, the low-class seats were not only narrow, but also had no barriers or soundproofing. It was not safe. Yang Wu had just hooked up with a female cultivator from a remote galaxy and wanted to cultivate with her. Therefore, he had set his eyes on Jiang Tian and Guochuandong's room. I'm sorry. I don't lack money. I won't trade with you. Jiang Tian smiled and said. Chapter 1830. That's right. How many years have you been abstaining from food? Don't you know that ordinary food is not allowed in the carriage? Beside Yang Wu, a charming woman in a red dress fanned the flames and shouted, If you don't change seats, I will report to Sun Yen and Yan Nanxian. Let's see if anyone can maintain order and throw you out of the empty carriage. Seeing this, Guochuandong quickly put away the peacock leg, cupped his hands and smiled humbly. I'm sorry. I was hungry and couldn't help but eat a few mouthfuls. I don't want to eat any more. Why don't I give you mine? I only need an extra 10 million low-grade crystal stones. This guy wanted to take the opportunity to make a fortune. There was indeed a rule that prohibited eating on the carriage, but it was not limited to the private rooms. But Guochuandong intended to keep the peace and did not argue about this. Let's sit in the same room. It will be more lively. Jiang Tian also stood up with a smile. As the saying goes, don't slap a smiling face. But Yang Wu did not intend to keep the peace. He came from a planet close to the central galaxy, and his brother-in-law was also a prestigious existence in the Saint Origin continent. He had not learned how to hide his strength and bide his time. He had heard many stories about the elites of the sects in the Saint Origin continent. Now, he had already regarded himself as a member of a second-rate sect in the Saint Origin continent. The people he met were all ants from remote planets. Why should he hold back when he was in the right? So, Yang Wu smiled coldly and said, "Oh, that dog seemed to have spoken. It's not an ordinary beast, but a demonic beast. Fellow Taoist Siqing, you are amazing. You brought a demonic beast on the carriage. You must be backed by a spirit-severing realm cultivator. You must be kidding. We will leave now. Just give us the original price." Guochuandong was scared and did not dare to raise the price. Yang Wu was different from him. He already had a foothold in the Saint Origin continent. It was said that his brother-in-law was already a spirit-severing realm cultivator. Guochuandong could not afford to offend him. Unexpectedly, Yang Wu said arrogantly, "I changed my mind. I will give you both the private rooms. I will not give you any crystals. Otherwise, if you bring a filthy demonic beast into the carriage, it will be a great taboo. I'm afraid you will be thrown out immediately." A small fry from a remote village dares to cause trouble here. In fact, the big black dog had indeed gone through a safety check. This was because only bloodthirsty and violent primitive demonic beasts were allowed to pass through the security check. If the demonic beasts had been tamed, they would not be included. However, Yang Wu believed that as long as he reported it, Sun Yan would definitely give him face. However, after hearing those words, Jiang Tian, who had already stood up, suddenly sat back down. He sat cross-legged in meditation, calm and composed. "Close the door and let the dog out." Just as Yang Wu was puzzled, Jiang Tian suddenly spat out a few words. How can we do that?" Guochuandong was shocked. They came from a remote and desolate place, and they were like duckweeds in the water. How could they afford to offend an existence like Yang Wu? Although Yang Wu was only a golden core cultivator, his companions were the elites of their planet. All of them had reached the peak of the nascent soul stage, and they were all at the peak of the nascent soul stage. Besides, even if Jiang Tian was lucky enough to win, when he arrived at the Saint Origin continent, wouldn't he win the bloody and cruel revenge of the other side? Bullshit. As if he had been greatly insulted, he burst out in disgust. His dantian rumbled and his golden core trembled. A vast amount of true essence surged toward Jiang Tian to suppress him. "Don't bleed. I have to clean it with talismans later," Jiang Tian said softly. Just as everyone was trying to figure out what was going on, the large black dog suddenly transformed into a 3-meter-long true dragon. It shook its head and swung its tail, sending Yang Wu flying with a swipe of its tail. Yang Wu clutched his chest as he tumbled to the ground, screaming miserably. Then, the purple golden true dragon opened its bloody mouth and sucked fiercely, swallowing all of Yang Wu's companions in an instant. Its saw-like teeth chewed crazily and swallowed them in the blink of an eye. Yang Wu's temporary companion was already trembling in fear, paralyzed on the ground and scared out of his wits. Guochuandong's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. My heavens, this unassuming large black dog is actually so terrifying. It even swallowed nascent soul stage cultivators in the blink of an eye. At this moment, he believed that Chen Xiong, Blood Monk Tu Ju, and the other elders of the Haotian sect were killed by Jiang Tian. After a while, the purple golden true dragon turned back into a big black dog. It stood up like a human and slapped Yang Wu's face. With its hands on its waist, it shouted, "Yang Wu, am I a small fish from a remote place? Am I a dirty demonic beast? You're looking down on me. How do you know my strength?" Yang Wu was trembling in fear. He didn't dare to refute. Instead, he apologized, "I didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I was wrong. Senior, please spare my life." "Get lost." Jiang Tian waved his hand. Yang Wu and his companion hurriedly retreated, not daring to say a word. Guochuandong was stunned for a long time before he said, "What if Yang Wu takes revenge in the future?" "Revenge? He's far from it. Jiang Tian sneered and didn't say anything else. Yang Wu turned around and went to Sun Yan's room. He told Sun Yan the story with some exaggeration. Sun Yan frowned and said, "This guy's cultivation is so powerful? This kid might have some strength, but how could he be a match for Senior Sun? Moreover, Senior Yan Nancian is still suppressing him here." Yang Wu was unwilling to give up. He added fuel to the fire and urged Sun Yan to make a move to uphold justice. "I'll let you know, Brother Yang Wu. Forcibly changing seats is indeed against the rules of the carriage. Once there's bloodshed, you'll have to bear the consequences. I can't help you even if I want to." Sun Yan had a helpless look on his face. He sighed and said, "Brother, you might as well listen to me. It's better to avoid unnecessary trouble. He only killed your companion, not your parents. Why take it to heart? Let me tell you something. In the Saint Origin world and the Central Galaxy, background, roots, sex, and aristocratic families are nothing but illusions. Only strength is real. You'd better not offend the strong, or you'll end up miserable. Mr. Sun, I'll never come to your carriage again with your attitude." Yang Wu was so angry that his face turned red. He left in a huff. He had no choice but to come up with another plan. He went to Yan Nancian and told him about it. Yan Nancian was shocked. He said in disbelief, "This guy's foundation is extraordinary." Yan Beifei and Zhao Feifei couldn't calm down either. The beast Jiang Tian took in was a nascent soul cultivator. It was so powerful that it could kill a 9th-grade nascent soul cultivator as easily as cutting vegetables. It probably had the bloodline of a divine beast and was as powerful as a soul formation cultivator. And yet, Jiang Tian was able to take him in. He was definitely powerful. Yan Nanxian's eyes flickered with a bright light, and his expression was indeterminate. He seemed to be deep in thought and planning. Suddenly, he waved his hand and said emotionally, "Feifei, ask him to come here. Their attitude must be respectful and courteous. See if he's willing to join the Heavenly Luo sect. Tell him that if he agrees, I'll take him in as my last disciple and teach him everything I know." "You'll take him in as your own disciple? Imparting all your ultimate techniques to me?" At the side, Yang Wu was dumbfounded. Beside him, his female companion's beautiful eyes were also wide open. A cultivator from a remote galaxy hadn't even done anything. His pet had already attracted the attention of a soul formation cultivator? She couldn't help but think that it would be great if she could be favored by Wanderer Siqing. Yang Wu, who was as stupid as a cow, was definitely not comparable to her. Yang Wu was so scared that his soul was about to leave his body. He trembled and his face turned pale. He swallowed and knelt on the ground, saying with a trembling voice, "Senior Yan Nancian, just pretend that I've never been here and never said anything like that, okay? Don't let Senior Siqing know about this." Chapter 1831. "All right, you may go." Yan Nancian nodded. Meanwhile, Zhao Feifei had already arrived at Jiang Tian's room. She said softly, "Siqing, I'm an elite disciple of the Tian Luo sect, Zhao Feifei. I'm a disciple of Senior Yan Nancian." "Greetings, Siqing. Please have a seat." Jiang Tian's expression was calm. His tone was calm. "Thank you, Siqing." Zhao Feifei curtsied and sat down. She was born in a wealthy family and was a disciple of the Tian Luo sect. Her every move and smile was graceful and elegant. She was as beautiful as a peerless pearl. She smiled and expressed her intention. "This must be your first time in the Saint Origin world or the entire Central Galaxy, right?" "Indeed." Jiang Tian nodded. "You may not know this, but the Saint Origin world respects the strong and the weak are ants. Thousands of sects coexist, thousands of races exist, heroes rise together, and saints compete for hegemony. It's very chaotic, and the conflicts between cultivators are extremely bloody and cruel." Zhao Feifei's facial features were exquisite. Her skin was fair like a jade carving. Her face was delicate and beautiful, as if she was otherworldly. As the saying goes, the tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. Especially for a young talent like you will definitely attract the attention of many experts who want to kill you. You have to be careful. Zhao Feifei was charming, pure, and lustful. She was also very eloquent and very good at bewitching people. She could make people feel as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. Naturally, they would let down their guard and even fall in love with her. In his previous life, when Jiang Tian met Zhao Feifei, he even suspected that she might have practiced the Tao of joy and the art of seduction. Indeed. This is my first time here, so I should be careful, Jiang Tian said calmly. This is only treating the symptoms, not the root. Zhao Feifei smiled bitterly. The real solution is to find a strong backer and stick together. Who will dare to provoke you in the future? Fellow Taoist, you mean, Jiang Tian mocked in his heart. Was Yan Nanxian so impatient? Zhao Feifei smiled and said, the Heavenly Luo sect is one of the top 10 divine sects, second only to the 5 great sacred grounds. In the vast Saint Origin world, it is ranked 6th. There was a divine transformation realm cultivator at the peak of the divine transformation realm. If fellow Taoist wishes to join, I am willing to introduce you to my master, Yan Nanxian. In the future, wouldn't it be a wonderful thing for us to climb the boundless path of immortality together? At the end of her speech, her eyelids drooped and her delicate head turned slightly to the side. She was bashful and timid, like a delicate flower reflecting water, causing one's imagination to run wild. No man would be able to resist this kind of temptation. Thank you for your kindness, fellow Taoist Zhao. However, I'm truly sorry. I've always been an itinerant cultivator. I really can't stand the restrictions of the sect. Jiang Tian cupped his hands and politely declined. Zhao Feifei was quite surprised and looked at Jiang Tian in disbelief. She never thought that Jiang Tian would reject her invitation. After all, the Tian Luo sect was indeed a sacred cultivation ground on the Divine Origin continent. Even on the Divine Origin continent, countless young talents wanted to join the sect and become its disciple. Not to mention a cultivator from a remote galaxy like Jiang Tian. Moreover, she had even given him some ambiguous hints. This is the Tian Luo sect. How can you refuse? Guochuandong's eyes were red with jealousy and he was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. He wanted to pry open Jiang Tian's head and see what it was made of. However, seeing that Jiang Tian's expression didn't change, he didn't dare to say more. Zhao Feifei said earnestly again, fellow Taoist Siqing, I wonder if you've heard what I said just now. The Black Sun galaxy seems vast, but compared to the Central galaxy, it's like a swamp in the ocean. You're the same as the Black Sun galaxy, a remote galaxy, so you're naturally very conspicuous. However, in the Central galaxy, you're as insignificant as a speck of dust. Not to mention anything else, just the Haoyan sect, which you offended, and the sect behind Yang Wu, you might not be able to handle it. Fellow Taoist Zhao, don't waste your breath. I've made up my mind. Jiang Tian refused again. He only had a few things to do in the Divine Origin continent. First, he had to find Huang Linger. He didn't have to take her away, but he had to at least protect her. Second, he had to wait for the treasure to appear and help him reach the soul formation stage. Third, he had to help Lin Yang and his old friends from his previous life. Fourth, he had to kill Yan Nanxian and his old enemies. However, the treasure was the most important thing. Before that, he had to keep a low profile and didn't want to cause more trouble. He shouldn't let conflicts erupt and attract the attention of the giants in the 9 heavens. Fine. Come to the Tian Luo sect when you've thought it through. Zhao Feifei sighed helplessly and stood up. Before she left, she shook her head and said regretfully, do you know that my master hasn't wanted to take in disciples for many years? You rejected the Tian Luo sect and my master. Do you know what you've lost? You've missed an opportunity that could save you 100 years of hard work. If I had such an opportunity in the early days, I would have reached the soul formation stage. Jiang Tian shook his head and chuckled. You're you and I'm me. Don't judge me by your standards. To you, joining the Tian Luo sect is an opportunity, but to me, it's not worth mentioning. Humph. You're so full of yourself. Hearing these words, The slight favorable impression Zhao Feifei had of Jiang Tian in her heart was completely exhausted. She coldly snorted, flicked her sleeve and left. After Zhao Feifei left, Jiang Tian smiled and didn't say anything to Guochuandong, who was trying to persuade him. His deep eyes looked at the storm star belt outside the car window and laughed in his heart. In your eyes, remote star areas like the Black Sun Star Zone and the Milky Way are not worth mentioning. They're insignificant. But you don't know that I've been to the 9 heavens and the supreme realm in my previous life. Isn't the Saint Origin world and the entire central galaxy just like mud? No matter how hard you fight for power, you'll still be mortals. It'll be difficult for you to become deities and deities. There will be a day when your lifespan will run out and you'll die. But for me, in 1,000 or 10,000 years, I'll be a deity in Hongmeng and live forever. Zhao Feifei returned to her room and sat down angrily. What's wrong? He rejected you? Yan Nanxian's face was calm as if he wasn't surprised. That kid looks gentle and humble, but he's actually arrogant. He's made up his mind to not rely on the sects and families. He doesn't take the Tianluo sect seriously at all. How can someone like him live for half a month in the Saint Origin world? Zhao Feifei said with disdain. Stubborn. You really can't carve rotten wood. Yan Beifei also looked disdainful. He smiled and said, this kind of cultivator is very common. They don't know how terrifying the central galaxy is. The Saint Origin world has a lot of soul formation cultivators and saints. All the void-returning saints in the Saint Origin world are enough to suppress a few galaxies. They still think that Saint Origin world is as remote and desolate as their ancestral star. This guy is very strange. He might be the best room for me. Beifei, keep an eye on him, but don't do anything rash. Yan Nanxian said with a deep look. Yes, father. Yan Beifei's expression changed and he quickly agreed. Yan Nanxian closed his eyes and lowered his gaze. He gradually immersed himself in cultivation. His chi was faintly discernible, like an old turtle. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.